Lisa looked from Esther to Xavier and back again. All three of them felt the awkward tension in the air. Lisa smiled stiffly. "I'm sorry, young man. Esther didn't make it clear." Esther gave her mother an incredulous look. "Mom, it's not that I didn't make it clear," she said. "You assumed I was bringing someone else." Lisa didn't respond. Instead, she smiled at Xavier again. "It's very nice to meet you, Xavier. Please come inside. I misunderstood the situation, and I'm sorry for that. I hope you're not too offended." Xavier relaxed and returned the smile. "It's fine, Mrs. Williams. I know all about Esther's date with Jack, and I'm okay with it. Neither of them had any intention of taking it further, so there's no harm. I guess Esther just forgot to tell you." Esther heard a touch of cynicism in his voice, and she shot him a stern look. She knew that he was trying to get on her mother's good side. Sure enough, Lisa patted his shoulder sympathetically and gave him a sincere smile. She led him into the house, and Esther followed. Her father was still at work, which gave Lisa the perfect opportunity to get to know Xavier unhindered. She bombarded him with questions. "So, Xavier, where do you work? And what do your parents do? Do you have any brothers or sisters? How long have you known Esther?" He answered her first three questions matter-of-factly. He came from a well-off family, so he had no inhibitions when it came to explaining what his parents did for a living. He wondered if he should mention his relatives in Cuba, but decided against it. When it came to answering Lisa's last question, he said frankly, "I've actually known Esther on and off for 3 years now." Lisa was clearly surprised to hear that, and her mouth unwittingly formed the shape of an O. She glared at Esther, silently demanding to know why her daughter had never bothered to tell her about the young man before her. She had even gone to the trouble of arranging dates with Jack and other men, when all along, Esther had been intermittently dating Xavier. "But we were never really much more than friends," Xavier said, reading the look on Lisa's face. "And we ended up separating." He paused and gazed at Esther. "But we got back together, and we've been officially dating for the past few months." Lisa could tell by the look in his eye that he had been besotted with her daughter, and she decided she liked her daughter's boyfriend. She wished she had gotten to know him sooner. Once the initial questioning was over, the three of them relaxed and settled into a happy conversation until Esther's father, Richard, returned home. Esther introduced her father to Xavier, and the two men shook hands warmly. They all sat down, and Richard and Xavier fell into a conversation about work. Lisa wasn't interested in the management of companies, so she took her daughter into the kitchen. Dinner was almost ready, and Esther asked her mother if there was anything she could do to help. As Esther was washing her hands, Lisa spotted the glittering diamond on her finger, and her eyes almost popped out of her head. She grabbed Esther's hand and pulled it close to her face so that she could get a good look at the ring. "Goodness me! Did he propose already?" "Yep," Esther said with a nonchalant nod. "When were you going to tell me?" Lisa knew that her daughter would never have gotten married in secret, but she did wonder why she hadn't shared such important news with her. She felt an ache in her heart at the thought of her daughter marrying and living with a man. She would miss her. "Tell me, is he really good to you?" she asked with concern. "Yes, he's very good," Esther replied. "I was busy at the booth all day today, and he turned up at the end of the day with a pair of comfy shoes for me. He came all the way from New York City especially." Lisa sighed. "Well then, I'm pleased about that." She stirred the pot on the stove. "You don't have to get married immediately, you know. You're still young. There's plenty of time. It's okay to be engaged for a while first, and then you can think about starting a family when you're about 30. You shouldn't leave it to any later than that, though." Esther stared at her mother indignantly. "On the one hand, she's telling me to hold off getting married, and on the other, She's telling me to hurry up and have a baby, she thought in disbelief. Hey, it's your birthday tomorrow, Lisa said. You won't be leaving right away, will you? Please say you can stay. And Xavier, too. We'll all celebrate your birthday together. Esther had forgotten that the next day was her birthday, and she clapped her hands joyously when her mother reminded her. I can't believe I forgot my birthday, she exclaimed with a laugh. It's my birthday tomorrow. I'm going to be 27. Oh my gosh. I'm getting so close to 30. It's not funny. She put her arm around her mother. Mom, I want to be 18 again. Lisa squeezed her waist. In your mom's eyes, you'll always be 18, she said. Esther smiled and gave her mother a kiss on the cheek. I don't actually have to go back to New York tomorrow, so I can stay and celebrate with you and Dad. Wonderful, Lisa said, and she turned off the stove. She went to the door and called out to the men. Dinner's ready. She lifted the heavy pot and carried it into the dining room. She placed it in the center of the table, and everyone sat down to eat. After the meal was finished and the men had cleared away, Richard challenged Xavier to a game of chess. He got out his board and began setting up the pieces before Xavier could object. Xavier didn't know how to play chess. He had learned the rules once, but had never gotten around to practicing. He shifted awkwardly in his chair. Sure, why not? He said. Judging by his relaxed look, Esther assumed he must be an expert, and she settled down on the floor beside him to watch. But it soon became apparent that he had no idea what he was doing, as all his pieces were taken by Richard in very quick succession. After only 10 minutes or so, Richard declared, Checkmate. Esther grinned at Xavier, who looked back at her sheepishly. So I guess you don't know how to play chess, she teased him. I guess not, Xavier replied, and he looked apologetically at Richard. When I was young, my father taught me, but I never actually played, and now I've forgotten all the rules. I promise I'll practice at home so I can play better next time. Richard clapped him on the back and laughed out loud. I like this boy. Xavier grinned bashfully, happy at the thought that he was being accepted into Esther's family. How about I teach you now? Richard suggested. Sure, Xavier said. Let's do it. And he eagerly began to set the chess pieces up on the board. Esther and her mother looked at each other and smiled. They could see that Richard was enjoying having another man in the house to teach his skills to. As the men played chess, Lisa made it the guest room for Xavier. Later, when Xavier went to his room, he found that it was conveniently situated next door to Esther's. He walked out onto the balcony and saw that it was separated from hers only by a low wall about 4 feet high. He went back inside and took a shower. It was a pleasant night, and Esther strolled out onto her balcony as she towel-dried her hair. She saw Xavier sitting on a chair, looking out at the view. His wet hair glistened, and when he saw her, he leaned against the little dividing wall and asked, Do you think your parents like me? You really want to know? Esther asked seductively. Hop over here and I'll tell you. Esther gave her a questioning look, and then he tried to assess whether he would be able to scale the wall between their two balconies. I don't think I should do it, he said. He was a guest in her parents' house, and he didn't want to jeopardize his chances with her by being caught on her side of the balcony. Esther laughed. You're afraid they'll see you, aren't you? And you don't want them to get the wrong impression of you. Xavier nodded, and she laughed again. Oh, Xavier, you're so cute. Then, to Xavier's surprise, she began to climb the wall between them. He looked down at the ground, 2 floors below, and was frightened that she would fall. He reached out his hands to grab her. If my parents see me, I'll tell them you carried me over, she said mischievously. but she had no intentions of crossing over the balcony wall, and she jumped back down onto her side with another laugh. Xavier gaped at her with wide eyes. He had never seen her behave so playfully. She studied his face. "Are you mad at me?" she asked. Without answering, he pulled himself up onto the wall and jumped onto her balcony. Then, he lifted her up into his arms, carried her into her bedroom, and dropped her onto the bed. She looked at him in astonishment. "I can't believe he just did that," she thought. "So, all it takes is a little bit of flirting to get him going. I'll have to remember that." Esther's body sank into the soft bed, and before she knew it, Xavier was on top of her. He grabbed her hands and placed his lips firmly onto hers. His kiss was frenzied, and she responded with equal passion. He smelled of the cologne she had made for him, and she was pleased that he was using it, even though he told her he didn't like cologne. They lost themselves in the passionate kiss for several minutes, until Xavier pulled himself away from her, walked back out onto the balcony, and jumped over the wall. Esther watched him go with bemusement. It had all happened so quickly that she hadn't been able to think of a thing to say, but her sharp eyes had noticed a physical reaction somewhere on his body, and she grinned to herself. She peeled herself off the bed and went out onto the balcony. She looked across at Xavier's balcony, but he wasn't there. She thought she could hear the sound of water running coming from his room, and she realized he must be taking another shower. A cold shower, perhaps, she thought, and she laughed out loud. Then she returned to her room and collapsed onto the bed. She waited for a while, hoping that he would return, but he didn't. She sighed, took out her phone, and sent a text message to Nancy. Jonathan had just returned home from his trip to Houston. He had managed to avoid reading the news for most of the time that he had been away. But as soon as he got home, Nancy told him that some experts had been discussing the incident that one of his Valkyrie cars had been involved in, and the whole issue of the autonomous vehicle safety had come to the forefront. He smiled at her and said, "This is exactly what I've been waiting for." She gave him a puzzled look. "Jonathan, this is a serious matter," she said. "If the experts get their teeth into this, it's going to have a terrible effect on the entire industry." There's been controversy around autonomous vehicles ever since they first appeared on the market. If those so-called experts want to dig deep, they just need to find the data that shows the accident rate is far lower than that of normal cars. That's how we got approval to produce them in the first place. But Nancy was about to argue, but he cut her off. "Can't you see? This is only going to make things better for us. While I was away, I realized that all publicity is good publicity. By this time tomorrow, this is going to be such a hot topic on all social media platforms." He looked at her confused face and saw that she needed further explanation. "By tomorrow, it's not only going to be the Davis Group that's involved, but every well-known overseas autonomous car manufacturer too." Nancy's heart skipped a beat as she, at last, understood what he was saying. "So we can use the conversation about the entire industry to turn the tables?" "Exactly." Jonathan nodded vigorously and gave her a kiss on the cheek. "How are you going with those reports?" "They're all done," she replied. "I've made 2 versions, one for the professional reader and one for the layman." "That's great," he said, stroking her hair. "Thanks for your hard work. When this is all over, we'll take a good break." "I'm not sure that's going to be possible," she said with an apologetic smile. "How come?" He sat down and pulled her gently onto his lap. "Because I'm worried your business will become so successful that you won't be able to take time off." She poked the end of his nose playfully. "Actually, I was thinking that if we can't find any evidence that the car was compromised, we can just announce the results of our research and that the real authority judge us. Jonathan said, "But wouldn't that just open the floodgates to criticism about the technology?" Nancy asked. "Yes, but if that happens, it would trigger a huge reshuffle in the industry. So, if we publicize the report, I believe we can place ourselves right at the top." She looked thoughtfully at him. "What made you change your mind?" "I thought of a few scenarios. I thought of the first time I saw you in the laboratory, and I thought about how you and your colleagues didn't eat or sleep and virtually lived at the company. Everything you did was for the good of this business." His words moved her, and she nestled into his shoulder. "Tomorrow's a brand new day," he said, kissing her on the forehead. The following morning, Jonathan went into the company offices. The receptionist was surprised to see him. No one had seen him since the Valkyrie incident, and rumor had it that he might have found a way out for himself. But he was back, still wearing his high-quality suit and leather shoes, which reassured his employees and restored their confidence. Jonathan had instructed Jack to set up a meeting with all the senior executives, and they were all waiting for him in the boardroom when he arrived. His instructions to them were simple. Nobody was to speak to any reporters because the Davis Group would be holding a press conference that very afternoon. When the market opened that morning, the Davis Group's share price fell again, and the internet continued to cast doubts about autonomous vehicles. Just as Jonathan had predicted, the entire industry was brought into the conversation, and the Davis Group became lost in the online chaos. The Davis Group posted a video of the Valkyrie incident on their website. It was a short video, less than a minute long, and was much better quality than the video that had gone viral several days earlier. The reason for posting the video seemed to be lost among the viewers. The footage showed the vehicle driving as it should, but toward the end, it swerved into the pedestrian lying onto the road. The video caused a fervor online. Within minutes, it had spread across multiple social media platforms, and the comments flooded in. Keyboard warriors aggressively attacked the Davis Group, insinuating that the high-definition version of the incident showed the company's blatant disregard for human life. They perceived the company as being above the law. Some people questioned why the company would post evidence of their wrongdoing, suggesting it had been done by mistake. The conspiracy theories ran wild. Shortly after, a new post on the Davis Group's website added fuel to the fire. A simple comment had been added to the video post. "Our apologies. The footage was posted in error. However, we have decided not to remove it." The internet seemed to explode. Within 10 minutes, the post and subsequent comment had become viral, and several social media platforms crashed simultaneously, including the Davis Group's website. It was an unprecedented event in the history of the internet. Eventually, technicians began to restore their platforms, but screenshots of broken links and error messages quickly circulated, as if to immortalize the event. Nancy stared at the error message on her screen and smiled. Dorian walked past her open office door when he heard her chuckle. Curious, he walked in and looked over her shoulder at her laptop screen. "What's so funny about the internet crashing?" he asked her in surprise. "Oh, I'm just happy," she casually replied. She felt that Jonathan had shown guts doing what he had done. He had deliberately created drama. He had known what the post and comment would do, but he had still gone ahead. The Davis Group's shares plummeted following the internet crash. Dorian didn't understand what was happening. "So, is crashing websites and social media revenge for all the angry comments?" Nancy looked at him, patted his arm gently, and replied condescendingly, "You're so young and still have so much to learn." Dorian was outraged. "Young? You're several years younger than me." Nancy didn't feel like arguing with him, and turned back to look at the screen. Frustrated, Dorian sighed. Your anger must have blinded you and made you forget who the older one here is. Anyway, even if Jonathan's company goes bankrupt, he'll still be rolling in dough, right? But you had better not think about using Brightstar to help him. Nancy looked up at him in surprise. Oh? And why is that? Are you afraid of losing your spot here at Brightstar? It was as if Dorian had something on his mind that he could no longer keep to himself. He frowned. It's rather you who should be worried about losing me. Our competitors won't hesitate to snap me up. My talent is valuable. I'm just worried about you, the young wife of an old man. What if he drags you down with him? Nancy narrowed her eyes and quickly said, Do you even know what he does? Why don't you spend the day with me and see what it takes to run a successful company? For a moment, Dorian looked puzzled and then blushed before asking, Hang out with you? Are you for real? Nancy chuckled. Yes, I want you to witness firsthand how Jonathan handles his business. You underestimate. A short while later, the Davis Group's website, social media platforms, and chat rooms had been fully restored. Then, a new post appeared on the Davis Group's website. The company will be hosting a press conference at 1:30 this afternoon. It will be broadcast live across all major news channels and social media sites. As expected, the comment sections exploded again, mocking and ridiculing the company. The keyboard warriors took to their online battleground, and an onslaught of belittlement ensued. They suggested that the Davis Group arrogantly underestimated the power of the people, that the organization was blind to the truth and only wanted to change the narrative in its favor. That afternoon, the press conference started promptly at 1:30. Jonathan, Steve, and a few other senior executives were present. Nancy had decided not to attend. As the company's trump card, she didn't need to play her hand yet. Therefore, Peter was the only autonomous vehicle technical department representative present. Jonathan's most trusted assistant, Jack Jones, stood behind the podium and welcomed the press. Thank you all for coming this afternoon. We have called this press conference to discuss the recent media storm in which the Davis Group has found itself. We will take questions after the briefing. The eager reporters immediately began shouting questions at him. What prompted the Davis Group to break their silence? A short, stocky reporter asked. Are you going to try and sell us some bogus evidence? Jonathan gave him a long, cold stare, sending chills down the reporter's spine. It had been a while since Jonathan had done a media briefing, and although it was rumored that he was cold-blooded, cruel, and decisive, the reporter had seemingly forgot and had felt brave enough to challenge him. The other reporters and media representatives immediately kept quiet, not wanting to bear the brunt of his wrath. He gestured to Jack to begin. Jack cleared his throat. The first item on the agenda is the matter of the Davis Group's first batch of unmanned cars. They had purposely chosen to discuss the braking system in the cars first because of the accident's timing and because it was the only flaw in their products to date. After the explanation, the flaw would quickly be forgotten. Meanwhile, in Cuba, Matthew Davidson sat in his oversized leather lean-back armchair and watched on his television. He had decided to give up on his usual afternoon nap to watch Jonathan's press conference. Alexander lit a cigarette. He glared at his computer screen and blew a single smoke ring. Let's see what the Davis Group will say this time. He scowled, flicking the cigarette ash into an ashtray. Standing behind the podium, Jack had started explaining the outcome of their investigation. Esteemed industry expert Abe O'Reilly designed the technology used in our first batch of cars. The technology developed by him and his team has set the benchmark for self-driving vehicles on an international level. Jack explained the competence of their technical team and the process the Davis Group had followed and purchasing the license to use O'Reilly's core technology. Alexander stubbed out his cigarette and sneered. This is ridiculous. Are they really going to play on people's emotions and make themselves out to be the victims? He coughed. Is this all you have, Jonathan? It didn't take long for Jack to explain the braking system issue. We must emphasize that although we are also victims of this situation, we are by no means avoiding taking responsibility for it. He looked at the camera solemnly. To our loyal customers, we are truly sorry for what happened and will ensure that it never happens again. We also extend our gratitude to the person who brought the matter to light. Without you, many more lives may have been in danger. We were able to recall our vehicles and, by doing so, prevent any further potential problems and fatalities. The safety of our vehicles is paramount. Jack was a handsome and refined man. His words were sincere and honest. For a brief moment, the keyboard warriors softened their harsh attitudes until the first negative comment popped up. Why did it take you so long to apologize? Several comments followed after that. Why did you wait for public outcry before speaking up? A life was lost. How will you react if this happens again? Soon, the internet was buzzing with more questions from dissatisfied people, and several of them poked fun at Jack and Peter in an onslaught of negative and rude comments. Jack went back to his seat and took a long sip of water. He returned to the podium and continued. We will now move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the unfortunate death of a pedestrian caused by one of our Valkyrie series vehicles. The reporters immediately started shouting questions at him. They weren't interested in that. They wanted to know about the plane crash. Over 300 lives had been lost, and to the media, it seemed the Davis Group had been avoiding the topic altogether. What about the plane crash? A reporter shouted. Yeah, was the black box ever found? Another asked. Jack ignored them and said, Please welcome our CEO, Mr. Jonathan Davis. Jonathan stood up and took his place behind the podium. He tapped on the microphone briefly before saying, Ladies and gentlemen, the Davis Group's strategy has been transparent for many years. It is no secret that we aim to achieve excellence and dominance in the vehicle and aircraft manufacturing industries. To this end, we will first discuss our interest in manufacturing self-driving vehicles and speak about our aircraft later. We are exceptionally proud of our development of our self-driving series of vehicles. Even today, while everyone doubts us, I firmly believe in and am proud of the Valkyrie series. Jonathan was a powerful orator. He spoke with authority and demanded attention. It is also no secret that the USA has entered the self-driving vehicle industry relatively late, behind our competitors in Asia. However, in the 2 short years we have spearheaded the development of self-driving vehicles, our Valkyrie series has surpassed all other vehicles produced by our competitors. The Valkyrie series has become the world's best, and I wish to express my gratitude to our incredible team of engineers and technicians. He paused and took a sip of water. No one had expected him to speak so passionately, and everyone eagerly waited for him to continue. You may not understand how I feel, so I would like to show you some footage, he said, gesturing to an audiovisual technician standing nearby. A large screen lit up, and images of a team of researchers and developers appeared. They wore pristine white lab coats and safety goggles, and they carried clipboards. They were on a tour of an immaculate, state-of-the-art production facility. The video showed hundreds of workers, each stationed at different production line areas. All the workers wore personal protective equipment as they operated advanced machinery. They looked organized and happy, as if they were all working toward a common goal. When the video ended, Jonathan continued. I hope you now understand why I'm so proud of our achievements. This is just one of our many manufacturing plants. our incredible technical teams work tirelessly to ensure the best production standards are followed. In fact, they have been known to work through the night for days on end, including my wife. Sometimes, I find her deep inside the console of a vehicle, getting her hands dirty. A few muffled laughs came from the reporter as they envisioned the scene. Jonathan smiled. This is my pride and joy. At the Davis Group, we give you, our loyal customers, nothing but our best, no matter what. Dorian stared at Nancy's laptop screen and whistled slowly. Wow, he's so suave. He sure knows how to get everyone's attention. Nancy laughed and teased him. Is that the kind of attention you want? He stomped his feet like a child. No, I'll have you know that women go crazy over me. They seem to throw themselves at me, but sadly, few are worth liking. Oh, you're fussy. What do you like then? Tell me, seeing you're such a stud. Nancy couldn't help herself. Dorian blushed and scowled. I only like the most beautiful and strongest women. You wouldn't understand. She laughed again and turned her attention back toward the live broadcast. Jonathan pointed to the screen behind him. I would like to share something else with you. This will prove our efforts. From this, you will understand how the Valkyrie works. A new image appeared on the large screen behind him. The short animation explained a self-driving car's development and manufacturing process in layman's terms. It showed blueprint designs and images of prototypes, test cars, and the final product rollout. The reporters and journalists watched in awe. I never realized a self-driving car is such a technological marvel, one muttered. Yeah, sure. But why was there a fatal accident? Another reporter replied. Back in Cuba, Alexander scowled, and he felt his confidence wane as he watched Jonathan's calm and collected demeanor. He didn't like that Jonathan had no qualms about showing the world his technology. And, to top it off, he had also just used the press conference as an advertising opportunity for the Davis Group. Alexander was wondering why Jonathan had so much confidence when it occurred to him that Jonathan may have obtained evidence to prove they had been sabotaged. His phone rang, startling him. It was his assistant. He sounded stressed. Sir, we have a problem. It seems like someone was in the storage facility where we were keeping the black box. Alexander felt a chill run down his spine. Where is the black box? It's still there, but... the man replied, hesitating. I don't know if it's the original. I have a bad feeling about it. Jonathan waited for the chatter to die down before addressing the reporters again. I understand that everyone is wondering how there could be a fatal accident considering the Valkyrie's flawless design. The room fell silent, and the reporters nodded, quietly agreeing to his statement. Please, look carefully at the videos we're going to show you today. The screen lit up, and the same footage of the accident posted on the Davis Group's website that morning began to play. Once the video had ended, another version began, but at a much slower speed. When the car appeared in the frame, the camera zoomed in. It had been overcast and dark on the day of the accident, and the streetlights provided little light. The grainy close-up showed a passenger in the car. He huddled over the car's central control system as it approached the pedestrian wandering about in the road. The passenger pulled out a wire and cut it with a sharp knife. The image froze, and Jonathan said, "Take a look at the timestamp of this shot." He pointed to the screen. The video continued to play. The car drove forward for a short while before it swerved into the pedestrian. After hitting him, it drove on for a few feet before it came to a stop. Then, a man got out of the car and hurried off down the road. The video played again at the regular speed, and it became clear to everyone that the car had swerved after the wires had been cut. Now, watch the low-resolution video that has recently gone viral. Pay attention to the timestamp on this video. Jonathan said. The car swerved at the exact same time as what Jonathan had pointed out in the slowed-down version. There was a stunned silence before the reporters excitedly began to ask questions. Jonathan gestured for them to be quiet. Our technical director will explain the function of the wire that had been cut. Peter stood up and approached the podium. He took a deep breath and explained. As you saw in the animated video earlier, our cars have several built-in sensors. These sensors are why our cars can accurately avoid obstacles and drive on the road without requiring to be steered by a driver. The sensors communicate with radar and satellite systems. The high-definition video you saw was taken by one of our satellites. He smiled slightly. The very same satellites that look at the tiny stars you gaze up at in the night sky. With our cars, the passenger is immediately notified if there is a damaged or malfunctioning sensor and the car stops driving. That's why the passenger in the car on that fatal day didn't cut the wire before the time. He had to wait until it was close enough to the pedestrian to hit him before the wire was cut. That explains why it suddenly swerved into the pedestrian and only came to a stop shortly afterward. His explanation was met with gasps. The videos were real, and it was obvious it hadn't been a malfunction that had caused the accident. The car had been tampered with, and the safety system sabotaged. The Davis Group had been framed. We have already apprehended the suspect, thanks to the outstanding efforts of our police. The suspect has pleaded guilty and will stand trial soon, Jonathan said as Peter returned to his seat. The reporters watched in shock as two police officers brought a man in handcuffs into the room. Because the situation affected the self-driving car industry on an international scale, the authorities agreed to have the suspect questioned in the live broadcast. Why did you cut the sensors? A reporter asked. The man looked down and mumbled. I only did it for the money. I didn't know what would happen if I cut the wire, but someone paid me to do it. Who paid you? I don't know. Someone phoned me, and their voice was distorted. Did the Valkyrie drive normally until you cut the wire? Yes. It only swerved after I cut it. I didn't think it was going to hit someone. Please forgive me. I'm destitute. I didn't mean to kill someone. The man replied between sobs. Jonathan gestured for the police to take the suspect away and continued to speak to the reporters. We believe those behind this terrible crime will be brought to justice. He paused momentarily before continuing. I feel an immense sadness. I feel the pain of the entire industry. I think about the men and women who have dedicated their lives to perfecting the technology that makes self-driving vehicles a reality. Their hard work and efforts have amounted to nothing because of this tragic incident. The expertise they shared with the world has been mercilessly mocked and ridiculed. Not only has the Davis Group and its people endured relentless attacks from the media and public, but the entire industry has suffered too. The screen lit up once more, and this time it displayed the countless negative comments posted on the various social media platforms and chat groups. See how the internet spreads false truths and information? Keyboard warriors destroy people they don't know with harsh words and ill-based opinions. I apologize to everyone who has played a role in our self-driving cars for what they have endured over the last few days. And I sincerely hope those who have made these terrible remarks understand how wrong they have been. Suddenly, the social media platforms and chat rooms buzzed with comments again, but the messages were very different this time. people began to apologize for what they had said. Some acknowledged the men and women who worked hard behind the scenes to manufacture the vehicles, while others praised the Davis Group for ushering in a new era of technology, creating jobs, and boosting the economy. Others pledged to support the Davis Group and endorse their products. But the most significant victory was the subliminal message that the plane crash could also have resulted from sabotage. Slowly but surely, one at a time, new comments began to appear. People questioned the validity of the crash being caused by a design flaw. Instead, they asked why the black box hadn't been found. They rejected the notion of boycotting the Davis Group's aircraft based on the assumption that the company built poorly designed products, when the real cause of the crash hadn't yet been established. It was the turning point that Jonathan had planned all along. Jonathan tapped against the podium to indicate that the press conference wasn't over. We will now look into the heartbreaking accident of one of our aircraft. I will hand this part of the briefing to my trusted partner, Mr. Steve Davis, Jonathan said, and he stepped aside for Steve to speak. Steve paused momentarily and cleared his throat. Ladies and gentlemen, as we all know by now, the wreckage has been found and confirmed as Cuban Airlines flight number JK8001. We offer our sincerest condolences to the victims of this unfortunate and heartbreaking accident, and our thoughts go out to their families at this difficult time. He kept quiet for a minute as a mark of respect to those who had perished in the plane crash. Concerning the black box, he said, I am pleased to announce that it has been located. Steve got straight to the point and didn't mince his words or play with them as Jonathan had. Everyone in the room gasped with surprise and waited for him to continue. The black box was located yesterday and sent to the authorities. Because the crash claimed the lives of almost 300 people, the authorities fast-tracked their investigation and worked through the night to deliver their report on the cause of the crash. There was a hushed silence as everyone waited for him to say more. We received the analysis report shortly before this briefing began, Steve continued, and the screen behind displayed a statement issued by the International Civil Aviation Administration Agency. He proceeded to read the statement aloud. It is with great sadness that we confirm 5 days ago, at 8:31 in the morning, Cuban Airlines flight JK8001 disintegrated at 35,000 feet in the air. The black box was successfully retrieved near the crash site and has been examined for the cause of the accident. The data indicated that the plane had been flying on course and didn't encounter adverse weather conditions or mechanical failure. The unsettling truth is that the crash was caused by human interference. We established that the plane exploded at the same time that the pilot released a distress signal. Therefore, the signal never reached the control towers. The analysis indicates that the plane had been hijacked about 2 minutes before it crashed. It spun out of control and plummeted to the ground. The crash resulted from premeditated terrorist activity, and the lives of almost 300 passengers and crew from 5 countries were lost. We express our sincerest condolences to the families who have lost their loved ones in this tragic event. No one said a word, astonished at the contents of the statement. No one doubted the report's authenticity, as an international authority had conducted the investigation. Therefore, it had to be authentic. The truth shocked everyone in the room and the viewers worldwide. The crash had nothing to do with poor design or manufacture, as everyone had blamed the Davis Group for. It had been planned ahead of time by ruthless terrorists. Steve continued. The Davis Group is shocked beyond measure at the truth of the matter. Jonathan leaned toward the microphone and said, The relentless public scrutiny and losses suffered by the Davis Group pales compared to the senseless and horrific loss of life and pain suffered by the victims' families. We are deeply saddened by what has happened and vow to bring those responsible to justice for their cruel actions. As soon as he had finished speaking, a reporter, fraught with emotion, stood up. Mr. Davis is right. We must investigate and report on every detail of this matter. Together, with the authorities, we'll find the culprits responsible for this heinous crime. Another reporter stood up. On behalf of the news agency I represent, we officially retract the false reports we published about the Davis Group and offer our apologies. The atmosphere in the room was solemn, as the other reporters and media representatives apologized for misreporting the matter. Once everyone had quieted down, Jack, who had returned to the podium, began to conclude the briefing. I believe we have now clarified everything sufficiently. We have prepared information packs for every reporter and media channel present. And there is also a link on our website. You have our permission to use the material as you see fit to rectify the misinformation spread about the Davis Group and give the people the real truth. He smiled before adding, the material we have made available also shares information about our cutting-edge technology with everyone, and we're happy to do so. The reporters laughed, excited to have authentic content to share with their readers and viewers. Jack tapped on the microphone to get everyone's attention one last time. Ladies and gentlemen, viewers and listeners, the Davis Group wishes to thank you for attending this press conference. With that, the press conference ended. The internet exploded with new comments, but as humans are creative and skeptical by nature, it didn't take long for conspiracy theories to circulate. Am I the only one, or does anyone else think that there's something fishy about this whole story? Yeah, I do. First of all, why hasn't the Davis Group ever had these kinds of incidents before? And who leaked the reports of the manufacturing breaks? Secondly, it's evident that the Davis Group was framed. I think someone deliberately did it to harm the company's reputation and market shares. And lastly, the issue with the brake system must have also been a conspiracy. Jack said that 2 years ago, when the Davis Group had bought the company over, they had had to change technical teams. I believe someone had deliberately been setting up the Davis Group, and they've been at it for many years already. I can't believe it. Who would be so cruel to set up a series of schemes to destroy their rival and be okay with human casualties as collateral damage? The group chats buzzed with excitement as they delved deeper into the issues. But soon enough, they veered off course and began discussing Jonathan and Nancy. Did you see how handsome Jonathan Davis looked? And he really put those reporters in their place. How about when he complimented his wife? Seems he has no problem letting the world see his affection for her. I think Steve Davis is quite a catch. I'll happily marry him. As usual, the chat spiraled out of control and became senseless and harmless chatter. After Jack had announced the end of the press conference, social media exploded with new comments. No one cared about the Davis Group's new brake system anymore because they had been distracted by what they had learned at the briefing. The focus had shifted, and the negative comments had changed to ones of respect and sympathy. In addition, the fact that the Davis Group hadn't attacked their naysayers when everyone had turned against them, but had instead kept calm and garnered them with a tremendous amount of respect. After the press conference, the social media platforms and chat rooms buzzed, but the internet remained stable and didn't crash like it had done previously that day. However, the Davis Group's video post trended for a long time. Their slogan, "Have you bought a Davis Group product today?" which had been used to mock them, once again became synonymous with pride. Customers openly acknowledged their loyalty and support for the company's brand and promised to support their technology through their buying power. However, the issues addressed in the press conference remained unresolved. Although it had been established that the Davis Group had been framed and sabotaged, the truth was that lives had been lost, and there was still a long way to go to bring the culprits to justice. Jonathan didn't want to be too involved in the investigations. He knew who had done it, but he could only provide clues as inconspicuously as possible because he wanted to distance himself from the situation. He had to let things run their natural course. The press conference had ended, but the stock markets were still open. It didn't take long for the Davis Group shares to rise exponentially. Nancy watched with astonishment as software shares she had recently bought skyrocketed. She turned to Dorian and laughed. "So what do you think about my husband now?" He shrugged and replied, "Jonathan is several years older than me. Maybe when I'm as old as him, I'll also be that good." Nancy smiled and encouragingly said, "You go for it." Dorian left her office in low spirits. He wondered if he could have the courage to face problems as Jonathan did. He knew he could turn to his brothers or close friends for help. He always had a helping hand somewhere, but he suddenly doubted his ability to rely on himself to handle challenges. Watching Jonathan handle the press so easily and with such finesse had left him feeling inadequate. He no longer regarded himself as having achieved much in his life and wondered if his time was still to come. Conflicted, he had an intense moment of self-reflection. "I've done some amazing things, haven't I?" he thought. "I've played an essential role in designing and developing a fantastic game. It's going to be a hit when we finally release it." As he mulled over his achievements, he heard his phone ring.
"Hi, Dorian,"
his friend said on the other side of the line.
"I'm going to be in New York tonight. Can we meet for a drink or two?"
Usually, Dorian would jump at the chance to hang out with his friends, but this time, he felt different. He glanced over at his colleagues, who sat diligently at their desks and worked. "Sorry, not tonight. I've got too much work to do." His friend was shocked.
"You? Too much work? What happened to you?"
"Maybe next time."
"Okay. You're missing out, though. I've got a hot date, and she's bringing a friend."
"Yeah, my loss. Have fun," Dorian said and disconnected the call. He slipped his phone into his pocket and sat at his desk to think about the next scene design he had to produce. Matthew stared at the television screen in silence. He had thought Jonathan might pull some tricks out of his sleeve, but he had never expected such a spectacular performance. He had been looking for someone to take over for him for years. He wanted someone intelligent, cunning, decisive, and indifferent. Theo was a good man, but not as capable as Alexander, who, on the other hand, had tendencies to go off the rails and could be irrational. Although he had wanted to nurture Alexander, he had never felt that his son would amount to anything. Matthew had watched how Jonathan had risen above his adversities and taken control after the death of his brothers. He began to feel that Jonathan was the only one suitable to take over from him one day. However, he also realized that Jonathan had flaws. He was too proud and too disobedient to be disciplined. He also valued his wife too much. Matthew regretted not helping Jonathan when he first came to Cuba, and even more so with his recent problems. He realized he had probably missed a good opportunity, but the more he thought about it, the more he felt that Jonathan was the right candidate to be the next leader of the Davidson family. He switched off the television and walked outside, feeling relaxed that he had decided on his successor. He stood in his expansive, manicured garden and glanced at Alexander's bungalow. He sighed and wondered if he would ever truly know his son. The Davis Group hosted a small celebratory dinner for their executives that evening. It was late by the time it ended, and Jonathan headed straight home. He found Nancy lounging on the sofa in her white silk pajamas while she talked on the phone. "Happy birthday, Esther, my dearest friend," she said with a smile. "What did you do today? I hope it was something romantic." She laughed happily as they chatted. When she saw Jonathan enter the room, she reached her arm out for a hug. He grinned and pulled her close against him in a warm embrace. "Let me not disturb the two of you any longer. Enjoy it," Nancy said, and disconnected the call. She put her phone on the table and wrapped her arms around Jonathan. "Our family's victorious hero has returned." He kissed her gently and replied in a low voice, "My wife is my hero." She smiled and told him about a few strange and funny comments she had seen online during the day. She also told him about Esther and how she had finally introduced Xavier to her parents. "It's her birthday today, and Xavier spoiled her rotten," she said and laughed. Jonathan narrowed his eyes slightly. That would mean that today would have been Olivia's birthday as well. His voice trailed off. Nancy looked at him tenderly and immediately understood what he had wanted to say. Latham had paid an arm and a leg for Mr. and Mrs. Edwards' dinner the other evening, but it had been worth it. After the dinner, the couple had agreed to buy several of their products in batches, but they had later learned how fond their daughter was of the company's tech products, and they had signed a 1-year contract with him. To celebrate the deal, Latham invited the project team and sales and marketing departments to dinner and karaoke. They drank, laughed, and sang as the night wore on. Ashley rarely participated in these kinds of events, but she had had a great day and was happy to join the party. As she was laughing and chatting with her new colleagues, she noticed that Latham was in low spirits, despite his best efforts to appear cheerful, and seemed different somehow. At 10 o'clock, when the party was still in full swing, he got up from the table and smiled weakly. "I think I'll call it a night. Stay and enjoy yourselves. Everything has been paid for, and you don't need to worry about coming in late tomorrow morning." They clapped and cheered, telling him to go home and rest. Ashley took a sip of beer, excused herself, and followed Latham out of the karaoke bar. Her feet were aching from her high heels, but she finally caught up with him in the hallway, waiting for the elevator. "Ashley, what are you doing here?" he asked, surprised. "Why are you leaving?" she queried. "Did something happen? You seemed upset in there." He looked at her for a few moments and shook his head. "Why would I be upset? I had a great day. You should go back inside and enjoy the rest of the evening. You can sleep in tomorrow." Just then, the elevator arrived. He stepped in and flashed her a smile. She noted how dazzlingly handsome he was, and as the elevator doors were about to close, she pushed them open and walked in. "Why are you so stubborn?" he asked. "I'm fine. Go back to the party." "I'm also tired. I want to go home." He knew he couldn't say anything to change her mind, so he just shrugged and rubbed his temples. "Okay, let's go." The two of them went down in the lift in silence. Ashley was trying to come up with an excuse to stay with him a little longer once the elevator arrived at the bottom floor. She wished he would open up to her. He was such a nice person, and he was Jonathan's childhood friend. She hated to see him so depressed. The elevator doors opened, and instead of going to the parking lot, Latham walked out into the street. She hesitated and then followed. He walked slowly and aimlessly with his hands in his pockets. She walked beside him, trying to figure out where he was going. Her feet ached, and she hoped he would eventually hail a cab. He suddenly stopped and turned to face her. "Ashley, has anyone ever told you that you shouldn't follow people?" She bit her lip and said nothing. She was about to leave him there when he broke into a wild grin. "Oh, I'm just kidding. Come on. Your brother would kill me if I left you alone at this hour." She breathed a sigh of relief and continued walking with him. "Where are we going?" "Let's grab some food at a diner. I'm starving." She was surprised. He didn't strike her as the type of person who would eat at a diner, but then she remembered that he hadn't eaten all evening. They found a small place on the street corner and went in. They sat down at the only available table, and the waitress handed them the menus. Latham ordered a burger and fries and asked Ashley what she wanted. She had never eaten at a diner before and decided to try the meatloaf. She looked at the lively groups of people around her and decided that she quite liked the atmosphere. She looked at Latham, who seemed to be a million miles away, and her good mood instantly vanished. The waitress brought their food a few minutes later, and Ashley was surprised at how good it tasted. She made a mental note to take Brock and Jonathan there one day. Latham was squeezing tons of ketchup, mustard, and barbecue sauce on his burger. She laughed. "Careful, leave some for the other diners." He stared at her coldly and continued what he was doing. She froze, and a chill ran down her spine. She had never seen that look in his eyes before. But his expression quickly changed and he relaxed. He took a big bite of his burger and smiled happily. She watched him eat and realized how little she knew about him. She wondered whether he was just pretending to like her. Does he even consider me a friend? Or am I just a nobody to him? She thought. She put down her fork and sighed. I'm tired. I think I'll go now. He said nothing as she stood up and left. She wanted to get out of there as fast as possible, but her feet were so swollen and achy that she could barely walk. She breathed in the cold night air with relief and continued down the street. Part of her hoped Latham would chase after her, but no one was there when she turned around. She felt bitter and hopeless. She reassured herself that at least she had been the one to leave him at the diner, and she tried not to think about him anymore. But the harder she tried, the more his face kept popping up in her mind. Just then, she heard a voice behind her. You look like you're in pain. Why don't you stop and rest for a while? Ashley stopped and turned around to find Latham standing there. His eyes looked almost sinister under the street lamp, but he was grinning. He went up to her and knelt down to look at her feet. Her breath caught in her throat, and her heart was beating so fast she was afraid she would faint. It felt as if the air around her had suddenly become thick. She wished she could just walk away and ignore him, but she stood frozen on the spot, unable to move. He looked up at her and pointed to his back. Why don't you climb up? I can give you a piggyback ride. She was stunned. That's okay. My feet are a bit sore from my heels, but I can still walk. Your feet are swollen and bleeding. How can you possibly take another step? I'll never understand why women wear such uncomfortable shoes. She hesitated before finally climbing onto his back. There you go, he exclaimed, laughing. Wow, you're heavier than I thought. How dare you? She cried indignantly. I'm barely 120 pounds. My breasts may be big, but I don't have an ounce of fat on me. He laughed even harder. Actually, you're hilarious. I'm just kidding around. She turned red with embarrassment when she realized what she had just said. Her chest was pressing down on his back, and his hands were holding her butt cheeks. She was relieved that she was wearing pants and not a dress, which made the situation slightly less humiliating. There's no need to be shy, he said. We've known each other a long time. She snorted. I'm not shy. I'm merely outraged that you think I'm fat. For your information, I have a perfect figure. Latham smiled and carried her a few blocks before stopping at an intersection. They stood on the street for several minutes trying to hail a cab, but all the cars were either occupied or drove past them without stopping. Let's just get an Uber, Ashley suggested. He nodded and reached into his pocket to take out his phone. Damn, I think I left my phone at the karaoke place. That's okay, I have mine. She took hers out, but all she saw was a black screen. Oh no, mine needs charging. Latham didn't look too disappointed and squatted in front of her again. Come on, climb back on. I'll walk to that bridge. Maybe we'll find a cab there. He walked slowly and carefully under the street lamps. Ashley pointed to a park across the street. Look, have you been there? He stopped and turned to look, suddenly remembering that he had been there with Olivia. He had taken her to many places after she had found out that she had stomach cancer. But during the last stage of her illness, they hadn't been able to venture very far. He recalled the day they had gone to the park like it was yesterday. Do you mind if we go over there for a few minutes? He whispered. Ashley didn't understand why he was keen to go to the park so late at night, but shrugged. Okay. He carried her over and put her down on the bench that he and Olivia had once sat on. Let's just stay here for a while. He leaned back and closed his eyes. She could hear his steady breathing in the cool, silent night. He sat like that for a long time. When he finally opened his eyes, he sighed longingly. Ashley felt that the man sitting next to her was far away and wondered whether it had been wise to follow him instead of staying at the club with the others. She sat there silently, staring into the darkness. When she finally turned to look at him under the street lamp, she saw tears in his eyes. She suddenly felt depressed and uncomfortable. His eyes shone under the light, and he looked so handsome and vulnerable that her breath caught in her throat. Today is my wife's birthday, he said quietly. She felt like the wind had been knocked out of her. I didn't know you were married. He didn't look at her. I'll never forget her birthday for as long as I live. We used to celebrate it on a different day, but I know it's today. It's a long story. Ashley was speechless. She's gone now, Latham continued, choking back tears. She instantly knew what he meant and wondered what he must have been thinking when he had kissed her passionately that time in the forest. Was he remembering his wife? She thought. Does he still miss her? I guess that's why he's so miserable. She wanted to get up and run as far away as possible just then, but she didn't. Instead, she gazed at him. He looked lonely and depressed, which made her feel even worse. He looked deep into her eyes and frowned. She turned away, embarrassed. Ashley, just promise me you won't fall in love with me, he whispered. Ashley felt as if she had been hit by a ton of bricks. She swallowed hard and broke into a cold sweat. She wanted to kick herself for thinking that there was something between them. She had obviously been imagining things since Latham was still in love with his deceased wife. Her throat was dry, but she managed to speak. You're my brother's childhood friend, which practically makes you my sibling too. How could you think I had feelings for you? He looked relieved. I'm glad. I was afraid that maybe I had led you on. She wanted to scream and hope the ground would swallow her up. I can't think about being in a relationship right now, he told her. Besides, you're like a younger sister to me. He's only making things worse, she thought, fuming. I wish he would just stop talking. She forced a smile. Stop being so narcissistic. Do you think every woman is in love with you? You're not bad, but you're not my type, so you have nothing to worry about. He finally relaxed and smiled back. That's good. Just consider me your big brother. You can tell me anything, you know. She nodded. Okay, the same goes for you. You can pour your heart out to me anytime. I'll try and help as best I can. Do you want to go for a drink and tell me what else has been bothering you? No, it's late, and I think I've had enough alcohol for one night. He got up and extended his hand. Come on, let's find a cab to take you home. She climbed onto his back again and inhaled the scent of his cologne. Though she was disappointed by their conversation, she felt a certain sense of relief that he still wanted to be her friend. As they left the park, she thought about what he had said and wondered how long it would take her to accept that there could never be anything between them. She vowed to be strong and forget him. Latham stopped at the curb and managed to hail a cab after a few minutes. They climbed in, and he gave the driver Ashley's address. They sat in the car in silence. She racked her brain, but couldn't think of a single thing to say to him. She turned to look out the window and thought about how empty and lonely the city looked late at night. When they arrived at her place, Latham walked her to the door and made sure she was safe. When Ashley switched the light on, she realized that Brock hadn't returned yet. Do you want a drink? He shook his head. No, thanks. It's really late. He was about to turn and leave when she screamed. Behind him was the drunk man they had seen getting out of the elevator the other day. Latham, be careful, Ashley cried. The man stood in the doorway, smiling at them. His face was red, and he appeared to be just as drunk as the first time they had seen him. Latham pushed him away and slammed the door. What the heck is wrong with him? Ashley demanded. He gives me the creeps. I wonder what he wants. Did you mention him to Brock? No, he's been so busy and preoccupied with his own problems lately. I just hope I don't bump into that lunatic again. I'll talk to your brother, Latham offered. He should check with security and find out who this guy is and whether he lives in the building. I'm sure they have surveillance cameras. Just relax. I'll try. She walked over to the door and looked out the peephole. She screamed again and ran into Latham's arms. I just saw him staring back at me. He's still out there. What should we do? She was trembling, so he patted her on the back and tried to calm her. Don't worry. The door's locked. He can't come in. His eyes were red and sinister. Why is he still standing in front of my door? I don't think I can sleep tonight. Latham put his finger to her lips to silence her and walked to the door. He looked through the peephole, but no one was there. It's okay. He's gone. But what if he comes back? Don't worry. I'll stay here until your brother gets back. He sat on the couch and made himself comfortable. She was grateful that she didn't have to face the stranger alone. Thanks. I really appreciate it. Do you mind if I use your phone? I want to call Jonathan. She took her phone out of her purse. I need to charge it first. She sat down next to him as they waited for the phone to charge. She handed it to him a few minutes later, and he smiled when he saw its screensaver. Do you think I'm a narcissist? Look at your selfie. She turned red, grabbed her phone, and got busy looking for Jonathan's number among her contacts. Just as she was about to call him, the phone rang. It was Brock.
Ashley, are you asleep yet?
No.
I'm just calling to say I won't be home tonight, so don't wait up.
Her brother said. Whatever, just be careful. Good night. Latham had heard everything. Doesn't your brother come home these days? She shrugged. Like I said, he's very busy. Then you should be careful and lock your doors at all times. I'll call Brock and tell him about this nutcase tomorrow. If you don't mind, I'll sleep on your couch tonight. She nodded. Thanks. You can stay in Brock's room. Just let me tidy it up a bit first. She got up and went to her brother's bedroom to change the sheets. She returned a few minutes later with clean pajamas for Latham. They're Brock's, but they've just been washed. You can find clean towels in the bathroom. Thanks, Ashley. It's late. Go to bed and try to forget about that crazy drunk guy. She wished him good night and went into her bedroom. Taylor, go get 2 buckets of boiling water. The bath's not hot enough. Patrick told his daughter. She nodded and quickly left to carry out his orders. Patrick gazed at the murky water and took a deep breath. This had better work, he thought. He hoped the medication would deliver the results he wanted. It was the recipe he had received from Jonathan, and he knew it was a Jung family recipe. Oliver's wounds from his old scars were festering, and new layers of skin were yet to appear. It was the perfect time to administer the medication. He stared out of the bathroom window and was pleased to see a full moon. According to some healers, a full moon was advantageous and could double the medication's effect. Taylor returned with a maid and 2 buckets of boiling water and poured the contents into the tub. The black, solid matter in the bathwater instantly disintegrated. Patrick told them to go out and wait for him. Then he went to get Oliver. He knocked on his door. Your medicated bath is ready. Oliver opened the door and looked at him in bewilderment. I didn't realize the treatment was today. We've waited long enough. It's time, and the moon is full, which is a good sign. Oliver reluctantly followed him into the small bathroom and glanced nervously at Taylor and the servants standing there. Ignore them, Patrick said, noticing his awkwardness and waving his hand. You'll need to take all of your clothes off, of course. Let's get to it. It's almost midnight. He signaled to the servants to give Oliver some privacy. The latter sighed and began to remove his clothing. He had never felt so uncomfortable in his life, but he knew he had no choice. None of the other treatments had worked, and the hot weather back home had only made things worse. At this rate, he thought his wounds would never heal. He looked at the scars on his naked body and walked over to the bathtub. Remember to soak your face in too, Patrick told him. Oliver clenched his fists and vowed to strangle the good doctor if he couldn't heal him. Don't worry. Everything is going to be fine, Patrick reassured him. Oliver's head was throbbing. He wondered whether Dr. Shaw was using him as a test subject to advance his research. He put one foot gingerly in the bathwater and screamed in agony. The burning sensation felt 100 times worse than the explosion had. I never said it would be pleasant, but it will work, Patrick explained. If it burns, it's doing its job. Oliver clenched his teeth, took a deep breath, and sank into the hot, murky water. He thought he could endure the pain, but it was too much. He screamed again. His voice rang out, scaring Taylor out of her wits. She knocked on the door. Dad, is everything okay? Everything's fine, her father replied. He turned to Oliver. Just soak in the bath for a few minutes. I'll come back shortly. Oliver winced and nodded. He was numb with pain, but he could feel the medicine working its magic. He groaned and closed his eyes. A strange sound floated in from outside. It was low and musical and seemed to come from a distance. It distracted him momentarily, but then the pain shot through him again. He felt as if the burning water were tearing his body apart, inch by inch. The musical notes became louder and more urgent. He imagined that he was on a battlefield, engaged in a fierce fight. His horse neighed as he waved his sword and charged at the enemy. He heard the sound of cannons and saw the soldiers' lifeless bodies on the ground. His thoughts then drifted to Cuba and everything that had happened there. The memories were so vivid that he felt as if the events had taken place that very day. The music outside suddenly became softer and lighter. Oliver imagined he was bathing in a cool spring in the middle of a rainforest. Fish splashed in the water and birds sang happy tunes as sunlight peeked through the dense foliage. He was much calmer now, and the pain he had felt just moments ago seemed like a distant memory. The sounds eventually faded, and he opened his eyes to see Patrick standing above him. It's time to get out. That's enough for today. Oliver shook himself out of his reverie and climbed out of the bathtub. A maid handed him some clean clothes. You can't bathe or shower for 3 days, Patrick told him. The medication needs to penetrate your flesh. Okay, thanks, Dr. Shaw. He was relieved the treatment was over and thought the bath had done him a world of good despite the excruciating pain. Try and get some rest now, the doctor said. Did you hear that music coming from outside earlier? Oliver asked. It was very relaxing toward the end. Patrick just smiled. Oliver returned to his room and forgot about it until he took his medicinal bath again 3 days later. As soon as he closed his eyes, he heard the sound of music drifting in again. It happened repeatedly, but the melodies were different each time. He began to look forward to his treatments and forgot about the pain while he soaked in the healing water. His 5th treatment would be his last, and he told Patrick he would be leaving the following day. The latter was surprised. So soon? We're sorry to see you go. I'll introduce you to someone special tomorrow. On his last night, Oliver was surprised to discover that his burns were disappearing and his skin had started to heal. He was grateful for the treatment's miraculous effects, and his opinion about the Jungs changed. He knew his family had had a long-standing grudge against them and had even taken revenge, but the treatment the Jungs had developed was going to heal him. He wondered how Jonathan had gotten hold of the recipe for the medication and whether he personally knew the family other than Jacob. He decided to apologize to the Jungs for his family's past wrongdoings if he ever saw them. The next morning, he packed up his things and thanked Patrick for his help in restoring him to his former self. A woman he had never seen before came into the room. She was in her mid-20s, but had a mature aura about her. Her features were delicate, and her eyes seemed to see right through him. There was something strange about her, as if she had transcended the mortal world. She was only a few years older than Taylor, but the two women seemed worlds apart. She nodded at him and pointed to his luggage. "Are you ready to go?" Oliver looked at Patrick with a puzzled expression. "Who is this?" "This is my friend, Helga Knightley. She came to town a few weeks ago to study the Jung's treatment. Her research played a big part in helping you recover." Oliver smiled at the woman. "Nice to meet you, Helga. Thank you from the bottom of my heart." She nodded imperceptibly. "You're welcome." Patrick cleared his throat. "Helga is also going back to New York today. You can go to the airport together." A small boat had arrived to take them back to the main dock, and Helga got on board. Oliver was surprised at how gracefully she moved. She must have superb medical skills if she's a friend of someone as renowned as Patrick, he thought. They waved goodbye to the Shaws and set off. Oliver felt the cool, refreshing breeze seep into the skin on his face and took a deep breath. Helga sat next to him and seemed to be in another world. She closed her eyes and turned her face up at the sky. He stared at the small shacks on the distant shore. Time seemed to move slowly, and he felt a wave of tranquility wash over him. The boat finally arrived at the main dock, and they took a car to the airport from town. Oliver said goodbye to Helga, and they went their separate ways. He watched her walk away, thinking he would never see the strange woman again. He boarded his plane an hour later and flew back to New York. Alexander was panicking. It had been a difficult few days. He was sure that Jonathan had evidence against him, even if he hadn't given the law enforcement agencies his name. He assumed he must have revealed a lot of information. He didn't believe the Cuban authorities would dare touch him, since the Davidsons were the second most powerful family there and had friends in high places. But because of the international nature of the matter, they could easily cave in from the pressure. Alexander decided to use one of his employees as a scapegoat and reported him to the authorities. He then threatened the man's wife and relatives to keep them quiet. He knew that even though the truth about the plane crash had come out, and he couldn't leave the country for a while, he could still enjoy his freedom. Mackenzie had mixed feelings. She was happy that his plan to take down Jonathan had failed, but worried that he wouldn't hold up his end of the deal to capture Oliver. As she and her brother were plotting their next step, they received word from the Davidsons that Oliver was back. Things were about to get complicated. Alexander's plan to take over the Sloane Empire had been put on hold due to Jonathan and Matthew's interference, and Oliver had returned after his strange disappearance. Back in New York, the Davis Group was still focusing all its efforts on damage control. Although they managed to turn things around, their profit had been significantly affected, and their autonomous car sales hadn't yet picked up. One afternoon, there was a torrential downpour in New York, and the slippery roads caused a multi-car collision on the highway. Because visibility was next to zero, vehicles continued to pile up on the road. People driving in the opposite direction stopped to take videos of the collision with their phones. At some point, as rain continued to come down, a red Valkyrie arrived on the scene and successfully maneuvered around the vehicles that had crashed. It was nothing short of a miracle, and someone posted the video of it later that day. The video went viral and soon had tens of millions of views from around the world. The 100-car pileup was one of the biggest the country had ever seen, but the Valkyrie had escaped unharmed. The internet exploded as millions of people praised the car and its AI technology. Many couldn't believe what they were seeing and thought the whole thing had been set up. The Davis Group's website and social media accounts became flooded with comments from enthusiastic fans, many of whom claimed that the car's technology could save human lives. Others compared the feat to a video game and stated they had never seen anything so amazing. Sales of the Valkyrie began to increase exponentially as excited customers flocked to the showrooms to see the company's miraculous autonomous car. News of the Valkyrie spread like wildfire, and the hashtag Divine Car topped the list of trending topics. The Davis Group could barely keep up with orders for the vehicle, and within a matter of days, the Valkyries were sold out. The company announced that the next batch would only be available in 3 months. While this was happening, the International Civil Aviation Administration Authority wrapped up its investigation of the plane crash and concluded that it had found no evidence of technical issues with the aircraft, giving clearance to the company's planes. The tables had turned, and the Davis Group became popular once again. On the day of their new traditional vehicle's launch, Jonathan and Steve went to the factory to cut the ribbon. All the cars had been installed with a new braking system and had received auto industry certifications. The factory was already full of excited employees when they arrived. They popped open some champagne and drank to their accomplishment. Jack came up to Jonathan during the celebration. "Sir, a woman named Helga is looking for you back at the office." Jonathan was puzzled. He had never heard of a woman called Helga. "I have no idea who that is, Jack. If she doesn't have an appointment, you can send her away. I don't meet with strangers. You know that." "Are you sure? She said she came here for a prescription. She looks like someone quite important." Jonathan's eyes narrowed. He knew immediately what she wanted. "Okay, I'll go see her." He walked to his office and found her waiting for him. She wore bright green trousers, and her long black hair was tied back in a ponytail. She was in her mid-20s, but he thought she seemed much older. He nodded to her in greeting. "Tell me why you're here." She was taken off guard by his directness and cleared her throat. "Mr. Davis, I was wondering if you still have the recipes for the Jung family's medications. You know what I'm talking about. I'd like to make a deal with you." Her voice was soft but clear. It sounded like a crisp breeze chopping through thick air. He hadn't expected her to be so direct. "Why? What are you offering in exchange?" "I recently got my medical degree and come from a family of world-renowned doctors. Medicine is in my blood, and I have a knack for healing people." He stared at her, not knowing whether to believe her or not. However, her expression and tone seemed so sincere that he had no reason to doubt her. "I can treat whatever ailments your family may have," she continued. "Your mother, for example, she has acute dermatological problems, and her meridians are blocked. She must have trouble sleeping at night." His jaw dropped. She was right. He had taken his mother to several doctors in the past, but they had told him her problems were due to old age. She had also fallen very ill once when she was young and had never fully recovered. "So you think you can cure her?" he asked. She nodded. "Just let me examine her and stay with her for a while. I can guarantee that she'll be better in a few months, and I'll have her completely cured within a year." He raised his eyebrows. "You seem very confident for someone so young and lacking experience." "I am confident. I hope that doesn't put you off. I can also cure your wife's anemia." Jonathan's eyes widened. His mother's illness was no secret, But no one knew about Nancy. He had only discovered her condition after she had donated significant amounts of blood and began to feel tired all the time. He had noticed that she had become pale and had taken her to see a nutritionist, but it hadn't helped much. She still frequently lacked energy and had low blood sugar. She often felt faint after getting up suddenly. Jonathan would do anything to help his wife and mother. "I'm willing to give it a go. Which medicine recipes have you come for?" She looked him straight in the eye. "All of them." He laughed. "Show me what you can do first. You can't expect me to just hand everything over." She nodded. "I understand you don't trust me yet. Let me spend a few months with your mother. Once you see how much better she feels, you can give me a few of your recipes." Her eyes shone when she mentioned them. He was familiar with that look. He had seen it on Nancy's face when she was determined to achieve something. He decided to give her a chance. "When do you want to start?" She shrugged. "Anytime, I guess." Jonathan took her to his mother's house after the launch party for their new vehicle. Carol was none too pleased to have Helga there, but since she knew her son had good intentions, she begrudgingly agreed. Helga took her pulse with surprising professionalism and appeared to know exactly what she was doing. She moved around with confidence and authority, like a doctor who had been practicing for decades. She examined the old woman's eyes, ears, and throat, and then she asked her a few questions. "Mrs. Davis, do you hear ringing in your left ear? It's tinnitus. I see you've had it for a few years." Carol was shocked by the diagnosis. She had never told anyone about the problem. Helga took out several silver needles from her bag, disinfected them, and lifted Carol's right hand. The latter was about to protest when Jonathan stopped her. "Mom, just let her try. It can't hurt." Helga performed some acupuncture on her hand, and within minutes, the ringing in Carol's ear was gone. Astonished, she stared at Helga, who calmly returned her gaze. "Dear, do you think you can completely cure my tinnitus?" Helga nodded. "Just give me a few days. I can guarantee that it'll never bother you again." Carol smiled with relief. "I guess you can stay then." Jonathan was impressed with what Helga had done, so when he went home later that day, he found a recipe for a prescription to give her. He went to see her the following day with Nancy. The maid told them that she was in the study, and they found her playing the piano in a long cotton shirt, with her hair hanging loosely down her back. She was so engrossed in her music that she didn't notice them there. Nancy suddenly felt a sense of déjà vu. The woman in the study seemed so familiar that she was sure she had met her before, perhaps in a previous life. Helga reminded Nancy of a magical fairy who had entered the mortal's world by mistake. There was something bewitching about her, though Nancy couldn't quite put her finger on what it was. Helga looked up after she finished playing and smiled at the couple. She stood up to greet them. "This is my wife, Maria," Jonathan said. "Do you think you can examine her? I also brought one of the Jung family's recipes." Helga took the envelope he handed her, but didn't bother to look inside. She asked Nancy to sit on the couch while she examined her. Nancy sized her up and thought the young woman had a calming presence. She immediately relaxed, knowing she could trust her. After a few minutes, Helga looked her straight in the eye. "Miss Davis, my suspicions were correct." Oliver winced and nodded. He was numb with pain, but he could feel the medicine working its magic. He groaned and closed his eyes. A strange sound floated in from outside. It was low and musical and seemed to come from a distance. It distracted him momentarily, but then the pain shot through him again. He felt as if the burning water were tearing his body apart, inch by inch. The musical notes became louder and more urgent. He imagined that he was on a battlefield, engaged in a fierce fight. His horse neighed as he waved his sword and charged at the enemy. He heard the sound of cannons and saw the soldiers' lifeless bodies on the ground. His thoughts then drifted to Cuba and everything that had happened there. The memories were so vivid that he felt as if the events had taken place that very day. The music outside suddenly became softer and lighter. Oliver imagined he was bathing in a cool spring in the middle of a rainforest. Fish splashed in the water, and birds sang happy tunes as sunlight peeked through the dense foliage. He was much calmer now, and the pain he had felt just moments ago seemed like a distant memory. The sounds eventually faded, and he opened his eyes to see Patrick standing above him. "It's time to get out. That's enough for today." Oliver shook himself out of his reverie and climbed out of the bathtub. A maid handed him some clean clothes. "You can't bathe or shower for 3 days," Patrick told him. "The medication needs to penetrate your flesh." "Okay, thanks, Dr. Shaw." He was relieved the treatment was over and thought the bath had done him a world of good despite the excruciating pain. "Try and get some rest now," the doctor said. "Did you hear that music coming from outside earlier?" Oliver asked. "It was very relaxing toward the end." Patrick just smiled. Oliver returned to his room and forgot about it until he took his medicinal bath again 3 days later. As soon as he closed his eyes, he heard the sound of music drifting in again. It happened repeatedly, but the melodies were different each time. He began to look forward to his treatments and forgot about the pain while he soaked in the healing water. His 5th treatment would be his last, and he told Patrick he would be leaving the following day. The latter was surprised. "So soon? We're sorry to see you go. I'll introduce you to someone special tomorrow." On his last night, Oliver was surprised to discover that his burns were disappearing and his skin had started to heal. He was grateful for the treatment's miraculous effects, and his opinion about the Jungs changed. He knew his family had had a long-standing grudge against them and had even taken revenge, but the treatment the Jungs had developed was going to heal him. He wondered how Jonathan had gotten hold of the recipe for the medication and whether he personally knew the family other than Jacob. He decided to apologize to the Jungs for his family's past wrongdoings if he ever saw them. The next morning, he packed up his things and thanked Patrick for his help in restoring him to his former self. A woman he had never seen before came into the room. She was in her mid-20s, but had a mature aura about her. Her features were delicate, and her eyes seemed to see right through him. There was something strange about her, as if she had transcended the mortal world. She was only a few years older than Taylor, but the two women seemed worlds apart. She nodded at him and pointed to his luggage. "Are you ready to go?" Oliver looked at Patrick with a puzzled expression. "Who is this?" "This is my friend, Helga Knightley. She came to town a few weeks ago to study the Jungs' treatment. Her research played a big part in helping you recover." Oliver smiled at the woman. "Nice to meet you, Helga. Thank you from the bottom of my heart." She nodded imperceptibly. "You're welcome." Patrick cleared his throat. "Helga is also going back to New York today. You can go to the airport together." A small boat had arrived to take them back to the main dock, and Helga got on board. Oliver was surprised at how gracefully she moved. She must have superb medical skills if she's a friend of someone as renowned as Patrick, he thought. They waved goodbye to the Shaws and set off. Oliver felt the cool, refreshing breeze seep into the skin on his face and took a deep breath. Helga sat next to him and seemed to be in another world. She closed her eyes and turned her face up at the sky. He stared at the small shacks on the distant shore. Time seemed to move slowly, and he felt a wave of tranquility wash over him. The boat finally arrived at the main dock, and they took a car to the airport from town. Oliver said goodbye to Helga and they went their separate ways. He watched her walk away, thinking he would never see this strange woman again. He boarded his plane an hour later and flew back to New York. Alexander was panicking. It had been a difficult few days. He was sure that Jonathan had evidence against him, even if he hadn't given the law enforcement agencies his name. He assumed he must have revealed a lot of information. He didn't believe the Cuban authorities would dare touch him, since the Davidsons were the second most powerful family there and had friends in high places. But because of the international nature of the matter, they could easily cave in from the pressure. Alexander decided to use one of his employees as a scapegoat and reported him to the authorities. He then threatened the man's wife and relatives to keep them quiet. He knew that even though the truth about the plane crash had come out, and he couldn't leave the country for a while, he could still enjoy his freedom. Mackenzie had mixed feelings. She was happy that his plan to take down Jonathan had failed, but worried that he wouldn't hold up his end of the deal to capture Oliver. As she and her brother were plotting their next step, they received word from the Davidsons that Oliver was back. Things were about to get complicated. Alexander's plan to take over the Sloane Empire had been put on hold due to Jonathan and Matthew's interference, and Oliver had returned after his strange disappearance. Back in New York, the Davis Group was still focusing all its efforts on damage control. Although they managed to turn things around, their profit had been significantly affected, and their autonomous car sales hadn't yet picked up. One afternoon, there was a torrential downpour in New York, and the slippery roads caused a multi-car collision on the highway. Because visibility was next to zero, vehicles continued to pile up on the road. People driving in the opposite direction stopped to take videos of the collision with their phones. At some point, as rain continued to come down, a red Valkyrie arrived on the scene and successfully maneuvered around the vehicles that had crashed. It was nothing short of a miracle, and someone posted the video of it later that day. The video went viral and soon had tens of millions of views from around the world. The 100-car pileup was one of the biggest the country had ever seen, but the Valkyrie had escaped unharmed. The internet exploded as millions of people praised the car and its AI technology. Many couldn't believe what they were seeing and thought the whole thing had been set up. The Davis Group's website and social media accounts became flooded with comments from enthusiastic fans, many of whom claimed that the car's technology could save human lives. Others compared the feat to a video game and stated they had never seen anything so amazing. Sales of the Valkyrie began to increase exponentially as excited customers flocked to the showrooms to see the company's miraculous autonomous car. News of the Valkyrie spread like wildfire, and the hashtag Divine Car topped the list of trending topics. The Davis Group could barely keep up with orders for the vehicle, and within a matter of days, the Valkyries were sold out. The company announced that the next batch would only be available in 3 months. While this was happening, the International Civil Aviation Administration Authority wrapped up its investigation of the plane crash and concluded that it had found no evidence of technical issues with the aircraft, giving clearance to the company's planes. The tables had turned, and the Davis Group became popular once again. On the day of their new traditional vehicle's launch, Jonathan and Steve went to the factory to cut the ribbon. All the cars had been installed with a new braking system and had received auto industry certifications. The factory was already full of excited employees when they arrived. They popped open some champagne and drank to their accomplishment. Jack came up to Jonathan during the celebration. "Sir, a woman named Helga is looking for you back at the office." Jonathan was puzzled. He had never heard of a woman called Helga. "I have no idea who that is, Jack. If she doesn't have an appointment, you can send her away. I don't meet with strangers. You know that." "Are you sure? She said she came here for a prescription. She looks like someone quite important." Jonathan's eyes narrowed. He knew immediately what she wanted. "Okay, I'll go see her." He walked to his office and found her waiting for him. She wore bright green trousers, and her long black hair was tied back in a ponytail. She was in her mid-20s, but he thought she seemed much older. He nodded to her in greeting. "Tell me why you're here." She was taken off guard by his directness and cleared her throat. "Mr. Davis, I was wondering if you still have the recipes for the Jung family's medications. You know what I'm talking about. I'd like to make a deal with you." Her voice was soft but clear. It sounded like a crisp breeze chopping through thick air. He hadn't expected her to be so direct. "Why? What are you offering in exchange?" "I recently got my medical degree and come from a family of world-renowned doctors. Medicine is in my blood, and I have a knack for healing people." He stared at her, not knowing whether to believe her or not. However, her expression and tone seemed so sincere that he had no reason to doubt her. "I can treat whatever ailments your family may have," she continued. "Your mother, for example, she has acute dermatological problems, and her meridians are blocked. She must have trouble sleeping at night." His jaw dropped. She was right. He had taken his mother to several doctors in the past, but they had told him her problems were due to old age. She had also fallen very ill once when she was young and had never fully recovered. "So you think you can cure her?" he asked. She nodded. "Just let me examine her and stay with her for a while. I can guarantee that she'll be better in a few months, and I'll have her completely cured within a year." He raised his eyebrows. "You seem very confident for someone so young and lacking experience." "I am confident. I hope that doesn't put you off. I can also cure your wife's anemia." Jonathan's eyes widened. His mother's illness was no secret, but no one knew about Nancy. He had only discovered her condition after she had donated significant amounts of blood and began to feel tired all the time. He had noticed that she had become pale and had taken her to see a nutritionist, but it hadn't helped much. She still frequently lacked energy and had low blood sugar. She often felt faint after getting up suddenly. Jonathan would do anything to help his wife and mother. "I'm willing to give it a go. Which medicine recipes have you come for?" She looked him straight in the eye. "All of them." He laughed. "Show me what you can do first. You can't expect me to just hand everything over." She nodded. "I understand you don't trust me yet. Let me spend a few months with your mother. Once you see how much better she feels, you can give me a few of your recipes." Her eyes shone when she mentioned them. He was familiar with that look. He had seen it on Nancy's face when she was determined to achieve something. He decided to give her a chance. "When do you want to start?" She shrugged. "Anytime, I guess." Jonathan took her to his mother's house after the launch party for their new vehicle. Carol was none too pleased to have Helga there, but since she knew her son had good intentions, she begrudgingly agreed. Helga took her pulse with surprising professionalism and appeared to know exactly what she was doing. She moved around with confidence and authority, like a doctor who had been practicing for decades. She examined the old woman's eyes, ears, and throat, and then she asked her a few questions. "Mrs. Davis, do you hear ringing in your left ear? It's tinnitus. I see you've had it for a few years." Carol was shocked by the diagnosis. She had never told anyone about the problem. Helga took out several silver needles from her bag, disinfected them, and lifted Carol's right hand. The latter was about to protest when Jonathan stopped her. "Mom, just let her try. It can't hurt." Helga performed some acupuncture on her hand, and within minutes, the ringing in Carol's ear was gone. Astonished, she stared at Helga, who calmly returned her gaze. "Dear, do you think you can completely cure my tinnitus?" Helga nodded. "Just give me a few days. I can guarantee that it'll never bother you again." Carol smiled with relief. "I guess you can stay then." Jonathan was impressed with what Helga had done, so when he went home later that day, he found a recipe for a prescription to give her. He went to see her the following day with Nancy. The maid told them that she was in the study, and they found her playing the piano in a long cotton shirt, with her hair hanging loosely down her back. She was so engrossed in her music that she didn't notice them there. Nancy suddenly felt a sense of déjà vu. The woman in the study seemed so familiar that she was sure she had met her before, perhaps in a previous life. Helga reminded Nancy of a magical fairy who had entered the mortal's world by mistake. There was something bewitching about her, though Nancy couldn't quite put her finger on what it was. Helga looked up after she finished playing and smiled at the couple. She stood up to greet them. "This is my wife, Maria," Jonathan said. "Do you think you can examine her? I also brought one of the Jung family's recipes." Helga took the envelope he handed her, but didn't bother to look inside. She asked Nancy to sit on the couch while she examined her. Nancy sized her up and thought the young woman had a calming presence. She immediately relaxed, knowing she could trust her. After a few minutes, Helga looked her straight in the eye. "Miss Davis, my suspicions were correct, but your condition is more complicated than I thought. I can only assume that you developed anemia because you donated significant amounts of blood. The body needs time to recover and produce fresh blood before you can donate again. You probably didn't give your body enough time between donations." Nancy frowned. "What should I do?" "I don't think changing your diet will help. You have a unique condition in which your body can't absorb the nutrition it needs. Your problem may be hereditary. Is there anyone in your immediate family that you can contact? Perhaps they have a special medication to take for this condition." "No, Maria doesn't have any immediate family left," Jonathan said anxiously. He knew that every trace of Nancy's family had been destroyed, although the Jungs had originally developed the medication Helga was referring to. He was sure they wouldn't be able to get a hold of it. "In that case, I can write a prescription for you," Helga offered. "I think I know what you need." She left the room and came back a few minutes later with a prescription pad and an ink pen. Nancy watched her carefully write out the prescription and thought that her penmanship was just as delicate and impeccable as she was. Helga handed her the paper. "The pharmacy can prepare the medication for you. Take it for 3 weeks, and your anemia will improve. You'll feel better and more energetic." "Will she need to continue taking the medication?" Jonathan asked. Helga nodded. "I suggest taking a break after the first cycle, and then doing 2 more treatments of 3 weeks each after that." "What if we want to have a baby? Will the medication affect her ability to conceive?" "No, but I recommend waiting until the 3-week cycles are completed." Nancy nodded. "Thanks. I appreciate your help." She and Jonathan returned to the living room and saw that Steve had arrived for a visit. Carol had told him about Helga. "Do you trust that girl?" Steve asked Jonathan. The latter shrugged. "She seems quite convincing. Only time will tell. I don't think she has any ulterior motive besides helping people." "She seems to be very trustworthy," Nancy added. "I almost feel like I know her, even though we've never met before." Steve frowned. "Okay, but I'll be keeping an eye on her." Nancy and Jonathan returned to their villa later and sent the maid to the pharmacy with the prescription. The medicine was prepared overnight, and Jonathan asked Dr. Cheng to confirm it was safe before letting Nancy take it the next day. Nancy looked at the black liquid in the bottle and stuck out her tongue. "It looks gross." "Take it with something sweet," Jonathan suggested. He went to the kitchen and returned with a spoon and some honey. She almost choked as she swallowed the bitter substance, and quickly put a spoonful of honey in her mouth. "Here, maybe I can help," he said. He went over and kissed her tenderly. She quickly forgot about the medicine as she kissed him back and inhaled the sweet scent of his body. The bitter taste in her mouth mingled with the honey and the sweet taste of his lips until only a lingering sourness remained. They were locked in an embrace for a long time. Jonathan finally pulled away and looked at her. "Am I as sweet as honey?" "Sweeter," she replied softly. "What would people think if they saw the dignified CEO of Davis Group getting all mushy like this?" He laughed. "I only show my sweet side to my wife." She wrapped her arms around his neck. "Your lips are the sweetest lips in the world, honey." "But that's not the sweetest part about me." He placed her hand on his heart. "This is." She couldn't believe that. After all this time, he could still make her heart skip a beat. She grinned mischievously at him. "Your pec muscles are the sweetest part about you? Really?" He grinned back and unbuttoned his shirt. "Yes. Why don't you have a taste?" She pushed him away playfully. "You're shameless." He grabbed her and pulled her down on the couch, where they stayed for a while. It was already dark out when Nancy's phone rang. It was Jacob.
Hey sis, I'll be going on a holiday for a few weeks, but I have a project to complete before then.
"What kind of project?"
I have to choose a city to visit, and then write about it. I decided I'd go to Santa Fe.
"That sounds great," Nancy exclaimed. "Maybe Jonathan and I can come too. I've never been there."
I was hoping you'd say that. I'll call you when I arrive, and let you know where I'm staying.
"Okay, have a safe trip. Talk to you soon." She turned to her husband. "Jacob's going to Santa Fe, so he can write a piece about it. Let's go see him. It'll be fun." "What a coincidence. Hannah told me yesterday that she was there." Hannah hadn't returned to Riverside City since her divorce from Brock. She had packed up her things and had driven south with Cleo, the cat that she had adopted. With no particular destination in mind, she had stopped off in various cities for a few days. During her road trip, she had found out about the Davis Group's PR disaster and Brock's dismissal from his company. Brock's dismissal had happened a while ago, but he hadn't told her. She had only heard about it from Latham long after it had happened. She knew there was nothing she could do to help Jonathan and hoped he would get through the crisis. As for her ex-husband, she wished him the best. She was enjoying her newfound freedom and the opportunity to discover new places. At times, she felt like she was the main actress in a movie, journeying through life without a script. Hannah enjoyed some places more than others and had finally decided to settle down in Santa Fe. It was a small town, but culturally rich, surrounded by acres of desolate beauty. The people were friendly and hardworking, making various arts and crafts that they sold in small shops. They led quiet lives and went hiking and bike riding in the mountains on weekends. She loved the simplicity of things there and yearned for a peaceful existence that would allow her to just relax at the end of each day and watch the sunset. She was particularly struck by the city's vibrant art scene and delicious cuisine. It had been raining on the day that she arrived, and a kind elderly man had helped her find accommodation and had even offered to take her on a tour of the city the following day. They had visited the historical sites, the railroad district, and the farmers market. Hannah had fallen in love with the architecture, the culture, and the numerous outdoor activities that were available throughout the year. She hugged Cleo happily, asking, "Do you want to stay here for a while?" Cleo simply purred and lay down on her lap lazily. Hannah laughed. "I'll take that as a yes." She was staying at a bed and breakfast temporarily, but knew she had to find more permanent accommodation if she were to remain there. The elderly man, who had become her friend, helped her explore the neighborhoods and suggested areas in which she could rent a small apartment. After looking around for a week, Hannah finally settled on one in the city's Guadalupe district. She thanked her new friend and promised to invite him over to dinner once she had settled in. She and Cleo moved in a few days later. Her new apartment was on the 3rd floor. It was small and cozy and had a balcony with a beautiful view of the park across the street. Cleo felt at home almost immediately and walked around happily. Hannah sat on the couch and sighed, looking around with satisfaction. She was sure she would be comfortable there and couldn't wait to explore her new neighborhood. The following morning, she woke up early and went down to the bakery on the street corner. She was so impressed with the fresh pastries and bread that she was inspired to try her hand at baking. So, the next day, she went to the grocery store, bought some ingredients, and went home to make bread. She whisked the ingredients together, kneaded the dough, placed it into a greased dish, and put it inside the oven to bake. She was so pleased with the outcome that she decided she would bake bread more often and learn how to make various pastries. She spent the next few weeks getting to know the city. She tried out new recipes and sent some of her homemade pastries to Jonathan, Latham, and Xavier. She wondered whether to send some to Ezra. The other band members had all contacted her since she had left Riverside, but she hadn't heard anything from Ezra. She suspected he might still be angry with her for leaving so abruptly. She was grateful to him for introducing her to a strange new world at a time when her world had been turned upside down. She had been in a dark place, and he had helped restore her faith in life again. She finally decided to send him a small box of pastries with no return address. She spent her days baking and taking long hikes in the mountains around Santa Fe. She made a basket for Cleo, which she immediately took to, refusing to sleep anywhere else after that. In the evenings, Hannah sat on her balcony and wrote her thoughts down in a notebook. She made friends with the young couple next door, often bumping into them in the building or on the street. She felt content and at peace for the first time in a long time. Ashley went to visit Jonathan and Nancy one afternoon and was offered some pastries. She took a bite of one and smacked her lips. "These are the best I've ever tasted. Just sweet enough. They melt in your mouth." She helped herself to 3 more and licked her fingers. "Would you like some more?" Nancy asked, laughing. "Thanks. Maybe later. Did you make these yourself or buy them at the bakery?" Nancy and Jonathan exchanged glances. "Hannah made them and sent them to us," Jonathan replied. Ashley was shocked. "Hannah? Where is she?" Jonathan cleared his throat. "She doesn't want anyone to know. But please help yourself to the pastries. You can take some home with you too." Ashley excused herself, left the house, and secretly rummaged through the trash can outside to search for clues of Hannah's whereabouts. She found an empty delivery box with her name and address on it and went home. Brock returned earlier that evening. "I was thinking we could go somewhere this weekend," Ashley suggested. "It would be nice to get out of the apartment for once, don't you think?" It took some convincing, but her brother finally agreed to go, and the following day, Ashley bought 2 plane tickets to Santa Fe. Ashley knew Brock was still reeling from the divorce and that his drinking had gotten worse. She was sure he had regained some of his memories of Hannah since his accident. He was whining and dining potential clients every night, trying to make deals, even though she had told him they had more than enough to support themselves. But he was determined to build another business empire, no matter what. She also knew that he called Anna every time he got drunk, so she decided that the only solution was for him to see her again. It was late Saturday afternoon when they arrived in Santa Fe. Ashley had never been there before, and she was stunned by its beauty. She hoped that Brock would reconcile with his ex and that they could stay there for a while. She had booked 2 rooms in a hotel near the center of the city. After unpacking, she decided to rest while Brock went for a walk. He strolled around aimlessly with his phone in his hand. The past few months had gone by in a daze. and only then did he realize how exhausted he was by the rat race back home. He felt completely numb. Hannah had forced him to move on, despite the emptiness he felt after she had left. He came to a small park and saw a woman sitting on a bench with her back to him. She had a delicate figure and her hair was tied up in a bun. She wore a sleeveless cotton shirt and blue trousers. Though he couldn't see her face, she seemed oddly familiar. He quickly dismissed the thought, however, believing her to be a local. The woman got up after a while, stretched, and walked over to the fountain in the middle of the park. Brock was shocked to see that it was Hannah. A million memories came flooding back. He couldn't believe she was there. Suddenly, he realized that it was no coincidence that Ashley had wanted to come to Santa Fe. She must have somehow found Hannah's address, he thought. All that talk about wanting to get away for a few days was just an excuse. She wanted me to see my ex. He hid behind a tree and watched Hannah for a while. He noticed that she had left a box with pastries on the bench. She returned a few minutes later and sat down. His heart was pounding as he debated what to do. She took out a notebook and a pen and gazed into the distance before scribbling something on a blank page. The park was empty, and only the sounds of birds chirping could be heard. He continued hiding behind the tree for what seemed like an eternity. Though he could only see the side of her face, she seemed happy and content. She's doing great without me, he thought bitterly. It's just as well that she left me. I can't give her anything now. Just a loser. It was getting dark, and she finally put her notebook away, picked up her box of pastries, and got up. He froze as she started walking in his direction and wondered whether to confront her or run away before she saw him. He lowered his head, pretending to look at his phone in case she discovered him. His heart was racing so fast that he thought he would faint. Just then, her phone rang. She stopped, looked at the caller ID, and hesitated before answering. Hello? There was no response. Ezra, is that you? I can see your number. Yes, it's me. She waited for him to continue, but there was silence on the other end of the line. Are you at the club? Yes. She waited as he cleared his throat. The pastries you sent were delicious, he finally said. Thank you. How did you know they were from me? Only you would send a package without a return address on it, Hannah. She laughed awkwardly. I can send you some more. I've recently started baking. That would be nice. By the way, we're about to do a set. Oh, you must be busy then. I'll let you go. No, just stay on the line. Hannah heard the voices of the other band members in the background, followed by laughter. She found it strange to be in such a different world now, a quiet, peaceful world that was thousands of miles away from the hustle and bustle of Riverside City. Hannah, just listen to our first song, Ezra said. She listened to him sing and thought he had improved considerably since she had last heard him. His voice was deep, rich, and throaty. She sat down on another bench as she listened, lost in the music. Brock was still standing behind the tree, close enough to hear everything she said. He wondered who her male friend was. A wave of jealousy washed over him when he saw her smile. What is he saying to her? He thought. Why did she stop talking? He clenched his fists, seething with anger. It was all he could do to stop himself from going over to her and grabbing her phone. He reminded himself that they were divorced and that he had no right to interfere in her life anymore. Brock was getting impatient. Hannah had been on the phone for more than 15 minutes. Finally, he heard her say, That was beautiful. Is that your new song? And then, You received an invitation to perform there? How amazing. Yes, I'd love to see you guys play sometime. She finished the conversation and put her phone back in her bag. a huge smile on her face. She then left the park and disappeared. Brock emerged from his hiding place and stared off in her direction, half hoping she would return. He stood there for a long time before he realized he was starving. The smell of food drifted through the air. He crossed the street to return to his hotel and had already walked a few blocks when he heard a faint cry. Startled, he looked around and saw a woman drowning in the river nearby. It was getting dark, and he could barely make out her figure. The voice was familiar, however, and it suddenly occurred to him that it could be Hannah. He ran over in a panic and jumped into the river. Even though it was summer, the water was freezing cold. He gasped for breath and felt all his extremities go numb. He quickly swam over to where he heard the cries for help and saw he had been right. It was Hannah. As he approached, he saw a pair of arms desperately splashing around in the current. He felt as if someone had ripped his heart out. He called out her name, took a deep breath, and swam even faster. He looked around for her, but the water had swallowed her up. He finally saw her bobbing on the top of the water a few feet away. When he reached her, he grabbed her from behind, swam to the shore, and pulled her out of the water. Seeing that she was unconscious, he quickly performed CPR. She coughed up the water in her lungs, gasping for breath. She was numb with weakness as Brock picked her up and carried her to a dry spot. She lay there for a long time, dazed and helpless. He cradled her head in his arms and saw that her entire body was trembling. A wave of déjà vu suddenly swept over him, but he pushed it out of his mind. "Hannah, you're okay now. Wake up," he said. She slowly opened her eyes and tried to focus on the man leaning over her, but her vision was blurry and it was dark. She reached out and touched his strong, heaving chest and felt a warmth emanating from his body. Her hand moved up along his arm to his shoulder. His body tensed up for a moment, and then he picked her up and took her back to the hotel. He went straight to the concierge desk. "This woman almost drowned in the river. Can you call a doctor? I'm in room 204. The concierge nodded. "I'll call one right away, sir." Brock took her to his room and laid her down on the bed. He then called Ashley and told her what had happened. His sister came running over a few seconds later. "Oh my goodness, how did she end up in the river?" He shrugged. "I have no idea. She must have fallen in. It was dark." "Quick, let's get her in a hot shower. She must be freezing. Her lips are purple." He helped him carry Hannah to the bathroom, where he carefully adjusted the temperature of the water and held her under the shower head. After a few minutes, he turned the tap off and then sat her down on the edge of the bathtub and hesitated. "Ashley, would you mind taking her clothes off before she catches hypothermia?" Hannah finally came to and looked at Brock with bewilderment. "What are you doing here? Where am I?" "You fell in the river and I rescued you. You're in my hotel room. I came to Santa Fe for a holiday." She sighed and leaned against his chest, but then suddenly pulled away. "I'm fine now. Just let me take off these wet clothes." Ashley stood by the doorway. "Hannah, do you need any help?" The latter looked up and slowly shook her head. Brock nodded to his sister to indicate that they should leave her alone. He paused before he walked out. "Just let us know if you need anything. I asked the concierge to call a doctor just in case." "I'll be okay," she said flatly. "Thank you for pulling me out of the river." He narrowed his eyes. "I just don't know how you ended up there. Weren't you paying attention? Don't you know how dangerous the current is? You're lucky to be alive." Hannah stared at him, remembering that he had said something similar to her once. She tried to recall the incident, but she was too dazed to think straight. She knew his reproach came from a genuine concern for her well-being and wondered whether he had gotten over their breakup. Relationships were so complicated. She carefully got up and leaned against the wall for support. I didn't realize I was so close to the shore, she explained weakly. I went over to pick a flower and stumbled. Before I knew it, I was in the water, being carried away by the current. The water was freezing cold, and I couldn't swim properly. Brock frowned. I hope you learned your lesson. She nodded. He and Ashley left her in the bathroom and closed the door behind them. Hannah took off her wet clothes, dried herself, and put on a warm robe that was hanging from a hook. She couldn't believe what had just happened. She knew instinctively that Brock was waiting right outside the door. She was furious with herself for getting into such a mess. What was he doing down by the river in the first place? She wondered. Did he come to Santa Fe looking for me? What does he want from me? Do you need some dry clothes? I can ask Ashley to bring you some, she heard him say. That would be great. Thanks. He knocked on the door a minute later. She opened it a crack, and he handed her a pair of trousers and a shirt. Brock looked at her slender arm and small wrist, thinking she was like a porcelain doll that could break any minute. An overwhelming sense of loss washed over him. Hannah gratefully took the clothes that Brock handed her. Thank you for today, she said, and closed the door. She knew he was still there. You can go now. You don't have to stay with me. Sure, Brock replied, and he readied himself to leave. But Ashley wasn't so willing to go. Hannah, I tried some of your pastries the other day. They were super delicious. Can you give some to me and Brock? Brock looked at his sister, and she raised an eyebrow at him. She had achieved her goal. And besides, she believed he should be thanking her. If she hadn't taken him to Santa Fe, he wouldn't be able to reconnect with Hannah. Behind the bathroom door, Hannah had more or less guessed how the two of them had found her, but it no longer mattered, and she had nothing to hide. Okay, she said. I'll give you a box full. Brock and Ashley walked Hannah home. Her place was only a block away. Then they went back to the hotel. Soon, there was a knock on the door. It was Hannah's landlady. She handed Brock and Ashley a box of Hannah's pastries. Hannah asked me to give you these, she said. She almost forgot and was too tired to come and give them to you herself. Brock took a pastry and bit into it. He didn't usually like sweet things, but there was something about it that he found appealing. He wondered if it was because it was made by Hannah. He imagined how she must have looked when she had made them. He was sure she had been so at peace. Brock went back to his room. He had a lot of work to do, and he spent the next couple of hours catching up. After he had finished, he went out onto the balcony for some fresh air and was startled by a small animal that jumped down in front of him. He instinctively took a step back, but then he realized that it was Hannah's cat, Cleo. The cat meowed at him anxiously. She wasn't asking him for food, but she seemed to be trying to tell him something. She pulled on his pants with her teeth and tried to lead him inside. Feeling a little concerned, he followed the cat back into his room and out into the corridor, picking up his key on his way out. Cleo ran downstairs, out into the street, and led Brock to Hannah's door. His heart skipped a beat. The lights were on inside, but the room was deathly silent. He knocked vigorously on the door, but no one answered. His heart tightened, and he turned the doorknob. He was relieved to find it was unlocked. He went inside, feeling a little frightened of what he might find. Hannah wasn't in the living room, so he went straight to her bedroom and found her lying on the bed, writhing around restlessly. She seemed to be in an intense state of discomfort. Her face was twisted in pain, and her fingers gripped urgently onto the sheets. Brock rushed over to her and took her hand in his. Hannah, what's wrong? She didn't seem to hear him. Cold, she muttered as she tossed and turned on the bed. Brock scanned his surroundings. The window was open, so he hurriedly closed it, and then he found a blanket in the closet and gently laid it over her shivering body. So cold, She moaned again. How can she still be cold? He thought. It's the middle of summer. It's got to be at least 80 degrees in here. But then it occurred to him that what Hannah was experiencing had nothing to do with the ambient temperature. He touched her forehead with the back of his hand and was shocked to feel that it was burning up. She had a fever. He couldn't understand what had happened. He had pulled her out of the water almost as soon as she had fallen in, and she had taken a hot shower and drunk some warm soup immediately afterward. Why does she have a fever? He wondered. Brock didn't have time to think about anything else. He remembered the medicine that the landlady had given her when they had taken her back. He found it, opened the packet, and filled a cup with water. Then, he gently helped Hannah to sit up in her bed. He let her lean against his chest, and he stuffed the pills into her mouth. She was in a state of semi-consciousness, and, not realizing that he was trying to help her, she pushed him away and spat the pills out. He pulled her up toward him and sat her up straight again. You need to take the medicine, Hannah. It'll stop the fever and make you feel better. He picked up the pills and tried to feed them to her again, but she pressed her lips together in an attempt to prevent him from forcing the drugs into her mouth. He managed to push them in between her lips, and before she could spit them out again, he had a flash of inspiration. He took a mouthful of water he had poured for her and pressed his lips firmly against hers. He pried her mouth open with his tongue, and then he released the water from his mouth into hers. Hannah had calmed down a little, and she swallowed the water and the pills with no further objection. Brock heaved a sigh of relief and felt a tingling sensation on his lips. It had been a long time since he had kissed her, and he touched his lips as if he hoped to preserve the feeling. She became quite docile, and she leaned against his embrace as he gazed at her face. Her eyes were closed, and he could feel her gentle breath tickling his cheek. He wanted the moment to last forever. He had almost forgotten about her fever. All he could think about was the desire he still felt for her, and the blood began to rush through his body, making him aroused. He had the urge to press his body onto hers, but he stopped himself. What the hell are you thinking? He thought. The woman's unconscious. It had been a long time since he had been with a woman, and he wondered if that was the reason for his urge. But he knew deep down it was more than that. Ever since their divorce, he hadn't taken an interest in any other woman. One or two had flirted with him, but he hadn't felt at all attracted to any of them, and he had ignored their advances. The truth was that he was still very much in love with Hannah, and nobody else would do. As he gazed down at her, his body continued to betray him. Hannah was barely conscious, and they weren't even together anymore. Yet he could hardly resist the urge to make love to her there and then. He shook himself. Pull yourself together, man, he told himself. How could you treat her like this? He decided he couldn't trust himself, so he gently lay her down on the bed and stepped away. He rubbed his temples and shook his head in despair. He was about to leave her room when she whispered again. So cold. Her teeth chattered. He turned and went back to the bed. He pulled the covers up higher over her shoulders and tucked them in around her body to keep her warm, but she continued to complain about being cold. Brock looked desperately at her feverish face and felt hot under the collar. Do you have any idea what you're doing to me? She used to be my wife, he thought, trying to reason with himself. It's not like we've never slept in the same bed before. And before he knew what he was doing, he had removed his jacket, lifted the blankets, and gotten into bed beside her. He gently pulled her into his embrace, and the old memories came flooding back. He had almost forgotten how small and soft she was, and he clung tightly to both the memories and her body. She snuggled into his warm body. A smile appeared on her face, and she stopped declaring that she was cold. She fell asleep peacefully in his arms. As he lay there holding her, he felt a strange sensation deep inside. His heart had been restless ever since the divorce, and the emptiness in it began to fill for the first time in a long while, giving him a sense of inner peace. Hannah's fever broke in the night. At 2 a.m, she became restless again, and he touched her forehead. Her temperature had dropped, but her body was slick with sweat. She had yet to completely recover from the fever, and she slept fitfully. He thought there was a chance she would continue to feel restless and hot throughout the rest of the night, so he undid the few top buttons of her pajamas. Brock's rough fingers touched Hannah's soft skin as he unbuttoned her pajamas. In her sleep, she trembled slightly. Her dream made her head feel dizzy, but she didn't wake up. In her dream, she felt a big hand sliding over her skin, making her feel relaxed and at ease. The earlier discomfort of the fever melted away, and she felt refreshed. The hand on her skin felt like it had left a burning imprint on her soul. For Brock, the night was especially torturous. Hannah remained in his arms all night, her head resting gently on his chest. He wanted desperately to touch her, but he knew he couldn't. She was ill. He wasn't the type to take advantage of a vulnerable woman. But the desire in his blood didn't dissipate. He didn't know how, but he managed to survive the night. The sun began to rise, but he still hadn't fallen asleep. He placed the back of his hand on Hannah's forehead once more and discovered that her fever had completely subsided. Feeling relieved, he gradually released her from his embrace, pulled the covers back over her shoulders, and got out of her bed. He removed all evidence of his presence in the room and took one last look at her before he turned and walked out of the door. Soon after Brock had left, Hannah woke up. Since she had moved, her biological clock had gotten into the habit of waking her up at 6 o'clock every morning. That morning was no exception, even if she was still recovering from a fever. She opened her eyes and stretched. Only then did she realize that the top 3 buttons on her pajama top had come undone. She frowned. "I'm sure I did the buttons up right to the top," she thought. She was particularly confused because the buttonholes were a bit too small for the buttons, and she had to force them through. How the hell did they come undone by themselves? Suddenly, she felt wide awake, and she abruptly sat up and looked around the room, half expecting to find someone there. Self-consciously, she pulled her pajama top up to her neck. The only other living being she found in the room was Cleo, who, at some point in the night, had curled up at the end of the bed. Hannah's sudden and unexpected movement woke the cat up, and she jumped off the bed with a disgruntled meow. Hannah felt confused. She remembered the warm embrace she had felt in the night. "Cleo, did you sleep with me all night?" Cleo looked up at her and meowed again, and then she went and curled up in her basket. Hannah still couldn't understand how her buttons could have come undone, but it seemed pretty obvious that no one else had been in her room. It must have been a dream, she thought, getting out of bed. As had become her habit, she made herself a pot of coffee, and then she sat down to practice yoga for a while. She still wasn't feeling quite herself, but she knew the yoga would help both her mind and body, so she pushed herself to do it. After an hour, she left her room feeling refreshed. She wondered whether she would see Brock and his sister again. He had saved her life the previous day, so she really should thank him again. But he was her ex-husband, and the whole situation made her feel awkward. Hannah arrived downstairs and saw the landlady busy in the dining room. "Hannah, dear," the landlady said, "I heard you were feeling unwell yesterday. I trust you're feeling better this morning?" "Yes, thank you. Caught a chill last night, but I'm much better now." "That's good. I just made some eggs and bacon. You should eat some. It'll do you good." Hannah thanked her and made her way to an empty table. She looked at the street through the large windows, but there was no sign of Brock or Ashley. "If you're looking for your friend who saved you, he's gone already," the landlady said, guessing what Hannah was thinking. "They left early this morning." Hannah gasped. They've already left? Yes. He came to say goodbye earlier. He said an urgent matter had come up at work and he had to get back. He left with his sister. Oh, Hannah said, and she subconsciously looked out the window again. The landlady didn't notice the sad look in her eye. They told me those pastries you made were delicious, she said. So when they left, I gave them some more. I hope you don't mind. Hannah didn't respond. She just continued to gaze out the window. The landlady smiled. Hey, what that man did was pretty heroic. We've had so much rain recently that the water levels have been rising upstream. It's reached over 6.5 feet, so it was actually quite dangerous for him to jump in to rescue you. You might have both gotten into trouble. Did you get a chance to properly thank him? It's a pity he left so soon. Yes, I'll thank him when I get a chance, Hannah said with a nod. They said they'll be back sometime, and when they do come back, I'll make sure they stay long enough to sample my cooking. Sure, Hannah smiled, and the landlady disappeared into the kitchen to get her breakfast. Hannah took out her phone and opened her contact list. After a moment's hesitation, she bit the bullet and searched for Brock. But then she remembered that, not long after the divorce, she had deleted his contact details, so she no longer had a record of him anywhere in her phone. It was true that Brock had to get back to New York to deal with a work crisis. He had hoped to say goodbye to Hannah before he left, but there had been no time. He and Ashley had gotten the first flight back to New York. Ashley was pleased that her brother had been able to reconnect with his ex-wife. He had even managed to save her life, and even Ashley couldn't have manufactured that event. She hoped he might be able to win her back one day. She was in a good mood when they arrived back in New York. She and Brock parted ways. He went straight to the company offices, and she returned home to continue working on her market proposal. Ever since her discussion with Latham after the work party, the two of them had managed to maintain a good working relationship. Even though he sometimes joked with her and occasionally called her Ash, she didn't dare to let herself think too much about it. She was no fool. She knew very well that she was attracted to him. She could deceive her head, but in the end, she couldn't deceive her own heart. He told her not to get too attached to him, but she found him difficult to resist. So, she had resolved to try her best to divert her attention to something else. As a result, she had thrown herself wholeheartedly into her work, so much so that Latham had praised her in front of everyone. He told the other employees that they would all do well to show a similar attitude to her, and if they did, no one would have anything to worry about. It had been 2 hours since Ashley had started working on the revised proposal to send to Latham. She rubbed her sore neck and went to the kitchen to fix herself something to eat. She found the pastries Hannah had made and ate one. When she finished it, she ate another one. Afterward, she paced around the house with a sense of guilt. She had recently downloaded a new game from Brightstar, and she had gotten into the habit of playing it after meals. So, to distract herself, she logged into her account and found a pop-up message for her in the group chat. She opened it and saw her familiar profile picture. She read the message. This is Galaxy. Ash, Service Area 203 is waiting for you. When she saw the message addressed to her username, she did as she was instructed and went straight into Service Area 203. She didn't know the identity of the person she was playing with for the past few days, but she knew that it must be someone in her friend list. She was ready to temporarily forget all of her earlier disappointments and play with him again that evening. But just as she was settling in to play, her phone rang. Ashley saw that the call was from Latham's personal assistant, so she didn't hesitate to pick up. There was a sense of urgency in his voice. Ashley, we need you to come in right now. We need to sort out Latham's project. She groaned, but she knew she had to react quickly. She forgot about the game she had been about to play and rushed out to the parking lot. When she arrived at the company offices, she saw that many of her colleagues had already arrived and were frantically working. "What happened?" she asked the first person she saw. "The sales department made a massive mistake," her colleague replied. "The pitch for the big business project we've all been working on is tomorrow morning. No one's ready for it, so my guess is that we'll be pulling an all-nighter. Hope you brought your toothbrush." Ashley gasped. "Tomorrow morning?" "Yep, we all thought it was going to be at the end of the month, but luckily, Latham discovered the mistake today when he was checking it over." There was no time to waste. Ashley thanked her colleague and rushed to her desk. She switched on her computer and began to prepare her part of the project. "Those assholes in sales should all be doing this," she thought bitterly as she tapped away at her keyboard. "But it looks like they've all gone home and left the hard work to us in the marketing department. Typical." The office was a hive of activity as everyone pushed themselves to deliver the work needed for the morning's pitch. Latham was holding an emergency meeting to set the final price. The research and development stage had already been completed, but the team had thought the project wouldn't need to be so rushed, so they moved on to other projects. Obviously, no one had expected to be pitching so soon, so the final cost and profit figures hadn't yet been calculated. And no one had yet estimated the figures that the competition might offer either. A calm stillness settled over the office as everyone concentrated on their own piece of the deal. Since Ashley hadn't long joined the company, the section she had been given was relatively straightforward, and it wasn't long before she finished her work. She sent her completed document to the marketing director, and then she went to her manager's office to find out whether there was anything else she could do to help. At that moment, Latham's assistant happened to be walking past the manager's office and heard Ashley offering to help. He popped his head around the door. "Ashley, I have a job for you. You can order some food for Latham. He hasn't eaten anything since this morning. Then, when you've done that, go to his office. He has a pile of data that needs to be checked." Latham's assistant knew that Latham and Ashley were close. He also knew that most people couldn't be trusted with the kind of sensitive information that Latham was working on, but he felt confident that Ashley wouldn't reveal the company's core price and costs to his competitors. Ashley ordered takeout to be delivered, and then she went to Latham's office. His emergency meeting had just ended, and there was a tower of documents on his desk. He signaled to her to come in, but he clearly wasn't in his usual fun mood. "Help me calculate these cost prices, will you? Be careful not to make any mistakes." Ashley nodded and got straight to work. She knew how to calculate basic costs. She sat in the chair opposite Latham, who was quietly contemplating the other terms of the contract. All that could be heard was the steady tap of fingers on the keyboards. She forgot all about the food she had ordered until her phone rang, disturbing the peace and their concentration. It was the delivery driver. He was waiting in the lobby. She dashed downstairs to collect the food and rushed back to Latham's office as quickly as she could. She returned to find Latham still typing away at his computer. She hadn't noticed before that he was wearing a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up and the two top buttons undone. His blue tie was hanging loosely around his neck, and his hair was ruffled. His attention was focused on the screen in front of him. She had never seen such a serious look on his face. The whole package made him look exquisite, and she could barely drag her eyes away from him. She placed the paper bag on the coffee table. For a split second, she hesitated, unsure if she should disturb him. Latham, you should probably eat something," she said tentatively. "Sure," he replied, without taking his eyes off the screen. His fingers continued to dance over the keyboard. Ashley didn't want to disturb him again, so she returned to her seat and continued with her calculations. After several minutes, she realized that he still hadn't touched any of the food. Not wanting it to go to waste, she got up and began to remove the cartons from the paper bag. "Come on, Latham." She placed the cartons on the table. "Please eat." She handed him a wooden fork and a napkin. "Thank you." He took the fork, and for the first time, he looked away from his screen and directly at Ashley. He got up and took a seat at the coffee table. Have you eaten? He asked her as he helped himself to the contents of the cartons. Yes, I ate at home earlier, she replied. Don't worry about me. He began to eat, and as he did, he realized just how hungry he was. Ashley and Latham had eaten together many times, but on those occasions, the meal had been leisurely. In his office that evening, he forgot all about his table manners and scoffed his food like a starved animal. Ashley smiled discreetly as she watched him eat, and after only 2 or 3 minutes, he had devoured the lot. He wiped his mouth with his napkin, and then he went straight back to his computer. At some point during the night, Latham's team finally completed what should have taken them several days to complete, and everyone collapsed into a figurative heap of exhaustion. Ashley handed Latham her calculations, and he entered them into the company's system. Then, he loaded the entire project onto a USB and placed it in a large manila envelope along with the contract. You should go home and get some sleep, he said to Ashley when it was all done. A few of my immediate team and I will present this baby to the client in the morning. You go and rest. I'd like to come too, Ashley said. I feel fine. I'm quite used to staying up late. I'd be happy to take your assistant's place if you want to give him some time off. Latham saw the light in her eyes, and he hesitated for a moment. Then he nodded. All right. The shop that usually does our printing hasn't opened yet, so why don't you get a 20-minute power nap? I'll call you when it's time to go. Ashley was about to lie down on the couch in Latham's office, but he shook his head and opened the door to his private room. She met his frank gaze and quickly looked away. No, it's okay, she said, feeling a little uncomfortable. I'll just lay down here. She plumped up a cushion and placed it at the end of the couch. No, I insist, Latham said. I still have 1 or 2 things to tie up, so I won't be around if that's what you're worried about. Feeling a little better about the situation, Ashley accepted his offer and stepped into his private suite. She had never been inside it before. It was a big space, approximately 65 square feet, and it consisted of a bedroom with a king-size bed and a bathroom. The decor was sleek and sophisticated in shades of black, gray, and white, and it had a masculine feel to it. After taking a look around, Ashley sat on the edge of the bed and took off her shoes. She tentatively lay down and closed her eyes. She got the feeling that the sheets hadn't been changed, since Latham had last used the bed himself, because she could smell his scent on the pillow. Her mind whirled with the events of the past few days, and she thought she would never be able to sleep. Ashley woke up and sat bolt upright in the bed. Light streamed in through the windows, and she picked up her phone in a panic. It was 8:27 in the morning. Her heart leaped. The pitch was scheduled for 9:30. She jumped off the bed and flung the door open. Latham wasn't in his office. She stepped out of his office, but he wasn't out on the floor either. She asked the nearest person where he was, and she discovered that he had left some 40 minutes earlier. Ashley cursed herself for having slept so long. She wished she had set an alarm. She grabbed her coat and ran to the elevator. At the bottom, she sprinted to the print shop and threw open the door. There were no other customers in the print shop. Ashley went up to the counter and asked the manager, "Did someone come in already to pick up the document for Mr. Latham?" The man nodded. "Yeah, your colleague was here about 40 minutes ago." Ashley's heart sank. She looked at the time and decided she would have to go as quickly as she could. But as she stepped out of the print shop, she saw the sky had darkened. Big black clouds scurried in front of the sun. The lightning streaked across the sky. The sound of rolling thunder could be heard in the distance. She checked the weather forecast and saw that the meteorological office had issued a severe storm warning. She tutted in frustration and tried to remain calm. She called Latham's assistant. "Hey, are you guys there yet?" she asked. "We're on our way there now. Latham said you were still sleeping, so he didn't want to disturb you." "Sure." Ashley took another look at the sky and made a quick decision. She caught the elevator back up to Latham's office and tapped his password into his computer. She was glad she had seen him enter it on more than one occasion. She found the necessary file on his hard drive and copied it onto a USB stick. Then, clutching the USB, she ran back down to the print shop.